This means that virtual meetings will be held using Zoom meeting software. All notices and documents relating to virtual meetings will be published electronically. The conduct of virtual meetings will reflect as closely as possible the arrangements for physical meetings set out in the Combined Authorities Constitution. The press and public will be able to observe meetings in real time by using a link on the meeting webpage. Decision statements and minutes will be published in the normal way. If we experience any technical difficulties, I will adjourn the meeting briefly while officers try to resolve these. If it is not possible and the meeting remains quorate, we will continue. If we become inquorate, the meeting will be closed and rescheduled. In addition to the published agenda, we will be considering a report recommending a review of overview and scrutiny arrangements. We've also received a number of questions from Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I will invite Councillor du Preez, the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, to ask those when we reach the relevant items. As Mayor of this combined authority, I've always been most proud of the things we do differently. We live in an area of great aspiration, and we want to make a difference to the place we live in. You're going to hear today in this meeting about the terrific work we're all doing to look at the impact on climate change, to deliver a zero carbon autonomous metro system, and our University of Peterborough, unique in delivering higher education, our Market Towns programme delivering much needed support during lockdown, and the work we are doing in partnership across our area for local economic recovery. But I want to talk first about the various stories that appeared last week about the £100 million housing programme, because some of these were misleading. And I'm concerned that people will be worried about what this means for affordable housing in our area. So I want to make it clear that we have proposals from government for a revised housing programme, and we're being asked to decide today if we want to go ahead with that. I don't have all the details yet. The main thing is that government have agreed to fund the programme to March 2022, which is exactly what we wanted, and we're working up details of the revised programme, and we will soon confirm exactly how many homes the programme will complete. There will be additional scrutiny in the final year of the programme, but this is no different to the scrutiny being given to other housing programmes like the one in Oxfordshire. I must say that we at the Combined Authority have questioned whether this policy is right for our area. Anyone can give away other people's money. To me as Mayor, there is nothing unique in doing that. As a board, we agreed that we wanted to try new, innovative solutions to build the housing programme that people want in the place that is most needed and at a scale that has a chance of addressing the problem. Government has told us that this programme can no longer be used for that purpose, but I've been reassured by the Minister that there will be the opportunity to look at more innovative programmes in the future. That is what I've always wanted to focus on, and I continue to do so. I welcome the Minister's assurance to me that innovation is always welcome, especially if it can provide more of the type of affordable housing that our future generations want to see. Speaking of innovation, this month, 3 thought-provoking conceptual designs for the Cambridgeshire Autonomous Metro have been completed, with a mission to inspire and inform what CAM could look like and how it could be delivered. The results have exceeded my expectations, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the designs can help shape CAM next steps. If you haven't taken a look at the designs yet, I urge you to do so. They are on our website and they demonstrate the tremendous potential of the system we are creating and how it can be a platform for sustainable growth and stronger communities across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Now is a good time to remind ourselves of what led to this design challenge in the first place. Last year, Dr. David Cleverly and the Technology Committee, of which he's a part, gave us an invaluable insight into the CAM's technical development, challenging us to think differently about possible solutions and steering us towards commissioning these conceptual designs. I would like to thank Dr. Cleverly for his vital support. I would also like to thank Daniel Ruiz, CEO of Zenzik, the organisation driving the UK forward as a global pioneer in connected and self-driving vehicle technology. The 3 conceptual designs have been through several review stages with the Combined Authority, and Daniel's unique expertise and input into these reviews has helped us achieve the end results we are hoping for. We have also announced that one CAM team are beginning the work of further developing the network to reach as many communities as possible. I'm pleased to say we are now looking at extending the CAM. We believe that the network must go to Ramsey, Peterborough and to Chatteris, but that's not the end of the line. We need communities and businesses to stand up and make the case for CAM to come to them. If there is a demand for jobs and new homes underpinned by a fast transport system, that we can work with those people to explore the possibilities. I've always said that the CAM is not an underground for Cambridge, it is a platform for growth across all of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and we are now looking to make sure the CAM reaches every community that wants it. Finally, before we begin, I would like to place on record thanks to Dr. Liz Robin, the Director of Public Health for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, for her tremendous efforts during the COVID crisis. In an unprecedented situation, her contribution has been invaluable, and I offer her my very best wishes for when she retires at the end of April. Councillor Herbert.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I would like to reiterate your comments on Liz Robin, and I would also like us just to, as we are at this meeting, continue to think of the over 1,000 people in Cambridgeshire who've died during the last year. Obviously, we remembered that yesterday, but I know several of them, including people who are in care, who died because they weren't properly protected. And I'm obviously concerned that a number of people are still grieving, including me. So I think the work of Liz Robin needs to continue, because we're not out of this and we do need to adopt a safety first approach. So I'd just say that. I'd also ask if perhaps we could bring the affordable housing report forward that you mentioned, perhaps after item 3.1, so that we take budget items first, Mayor. And I hope that you would be able to agree to that.
Yep, I'm entirely happy if the members are happy also, if they're not indicate so, but happy to bring that forward. Councillor Holditch. John, you're on mute, unfortunately.
I just wanted to say thank you to Liz Robin as well, because she's been under huge pressure for the last 12 months. But I'm pleased to say there's been 9 applicants for her job, all top quality people. So we'll be able to replace her as soon as. Thank you.
Chris Bowden.
Thank you, Mayor. May I suggest that if the agenda item on housing is being brought forward, that the two motions in agenda item 8 also be brought forward, so that all those things can be taken at least roughly at the same time.
Yes, I'm in complete agreement, quite happy with that. And if there are no further comments, we will go on to apologies for absence and declarations of interest. We've had apologies from Councillor Fuller and Councillor Smith, and Councillor Smith has been replaced by Councillor Van der Veer. Welcome, Aidan. Any declarations of interest? Okay, so we move on to the minutes of the 27th of January. Any comments on the minutes? Everybody happy for me to sign off? Okay. There are no petitions or public questions, but we will be taking questions, of course, from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee under the relevant agenda items. 1.5 is the forward plan, which is published on the Combined Authority website and updated regularly. Are there any executive committee decisions which members would want to be reserved to the board, or any other comments on the forward plan? No, so we'll move to item 1.6, and that is this is going to be introduced by Robert Parkin. Robert.
Thank you, Mayor. Members, the Combined Authority Constitution provides the monitoring officer with a delegated authority to accept appointments to committees prior to the Combined Authority Board, as it were, approving that by ratification. This report is to update you and seek ratification of Councillor Alex Miscandlin of Fenland District Council to Overview and Scrutiny for the remainder of the municipal year. Councillor Susan Walwark, again to Overview and Scrutiny from Fenland District Council, and from Cambridgeshire County Council, Councillor Mark Goldsack to the Housing and Communities Committee. Thank you, Mayor. Happy to take any questions.
Questions from members? No questions, so I move from the chair. Somebody put their hand up as a seconder and we'll take it as voted through. John Holditch. And therefore we will move to item 1.7, which is the annual review of the local assurance framework. In addition to the published recommendations, I will be moving the following additional recommendation to refer the Audit and Governance Committee's recommendation that there should be a presumption that meetings of the Business Board are carried out in public unless otherwise determined by the chair to the Business Board for comment and consideration. Rochelle.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, Mayor, and good morning, members. The report before you today is the annual review of the assurance framework. You will see in the appendix there is a tracked change version so that members can see what has been revised, and you can see that there are quite heavy revisions. Prior to coming to the combined authority today, the revised draft has been to the Business Board and also the Audit and Governance Committee. And the draft is now with CLGU, which is Cities and Local Growth Unit, for government sign-off. There are two matters for your attention today. The first being is your agreement for a lead member from Overview and Scrutiny carrying out the role of shadowing the activities of the Business Board. You will see at Appendix 3 a role description for what the lead member will do. And subject to your agreement to that recommendation, it's proposed that Councillor Murphy undertake that role. The second matter of consideration is strong concerns that the Audit and Governance Committee had in relation to the Business Board's adherence to Nolan principles and alignment with the approach of the combined authority in terms of openness. And it was the view of the committee that Business Board meetings should be held in public. So a recommendation to change paragraph 4.1.7 was proposed, and you can find that paragraph on page 113 of your main agenda pack. That change would read, all other meetings of the Business Board shall be open to the public unless otherwise determined by the chair. Of course, the Business Board has to take into consideration that request prior to it coming to the combined authority, and that will be considered by the Business Board at its meeting on the 12th of May, and then come back subsequently to the combined authority. So then just to echo the recommendation that has been added as recommendation F, it's to refer the recommendation of the Audit and Governance Committee that there should be a presumption that meetings of the Business Board are carried out in public unless otherwise determined by the chair, to the Business Board for comment and consideration. I'm happy to take any questions on the content of the report or the revisions made. Thank you, Chair.
Comments, members? Okay. Chris Bowden.
Thank you, Mayor, but I did notice that Austin was indicating, and given his position, maybe he should go first.
Okay. That's fine. Austin.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so I mean, from the Business Board's point of view, we'll give the latter thoughts and consideration at the next meeting. I'd just like to share with other members of the board here, though, that some of the difficulties that brings with the function of the Business Board, particularly with regard to its ability to scrutinise investment opportunities, often brought to us by third parties in a highly confidential manner. The whole essence of what we do in attracting those opportunities is underpinned by the fact that they are treated confidentially. And if we have an environment where we have to put all of that information in the public domain, my concern is that people will be reticent to bring those opportunities forward, or at least at a level of detail that enables us to make a sensible decision about them. We had a recent example just a week or two ago, where inward investment opportunity, and a significant one coming into Peterborough that could well sit behind 500 or so jobs, and the applicant is particularly sensitive around even asking the question in the public domain about what the pros and cons are of that opportunity and how that might work out. I really would caution people that if we moved in this direction, this could stifle our ability to properly understand, evaluate, and appropriately align and approve recommendations to the combined authority for future investments. we certainly welcome the opportunity to have a member of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee attend meetings to provide some insight, both feedback to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and feedback to me as a chair as well. If they detect any evidence of us drifting from the Nolan principles, I'd like to hear about it, and very quickly so we can deal with it. So we absolutely welcome that. And in fact, the whole business board voted unanimously in support of that after a lengthy debate, where considerable thought was put to the pros and cons of that, and you know, at the fear of being criticised for being politically naive. I think it's the right thing to do, and that's why we carried that motion forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Chris Bowden.
Thank you, Mayor. I very much welcome Austin's comments there. I do have concerns. The first thing is, it is important that we do have openness where openness is appropriate. And I think there are matters which are discussed at the business board, which are relevant and which can be discussed openly. The first in particular are matters of general policy, which I believe would benefit the business board if those discussions did take place in public. And then the second is where reports are received by the business board as to its own effectiveness and to the way in which the decisions which it's made have actually flown through in practice. So there are things which I believe can usefully and safely be discussed in public. But I do accept the comments from Austin that there are quite a number of areas, especially when you're talking about individual business opportunities, where it would be very, very detrimental to the interests of the business board and of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to have those discussions take place in public. And I would point out that I don't think that other LEPs generally do meet in public, presumably exactly for that reason. And the business board is not, of course, a body which is subject to the exemption rules which exist under Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, which we're all familiar with using in our local councils. So I do believe that there is a place for some parts of the meeting of the business board to be open. I think that place has, by the nature of the business board, to be quite limited. And I think it's extremely important that the chairman of the business board gets a great deal of discretion about being able to place various items into the part of the business board which will not be open, so that exactly the problems which Austin was mentioning don't actually materialise.
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you very much. Yes, I was in attendance at the business board where this was discussed, and it was discussed at very considerable length and in a lot of detail, and it was very interesting to listen to that discussion. It was very, very carefully and thoughtfully considered by the business board, and lots of points on, you know, many arguments made. You know, I think Councillor Bowden just made the point that I don't believe other LEPs do meet in public, and there are good and sound reasons for that. And I think what our business board has demonstrated, particularly through the pandemic, is that they are able to be nimble and fleet of foot, and, you know, take decisions as and when they're needed. And I think it would be a matter of huge regret if any of this was to slow that down and dilute any of that ability at all. I think our business board, since it reformed in its new guise, has shown itself to be incredibly effective and doing a great job for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And I think it would be a matter of huge regret if the business board started to get politicised in any way and started to become any sort of political football. And obviously it has to be open to scrutiny. We've had difficulties in the past with our LEP in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and so and I think it was fair to say that the comments at the business board really reflected the desire to, you know, be scrutinised and to be transparent, but also they obviously have a very clear understanding of when they're taking commercially sensitive decisions, and that needs to be respected. So, you know, I think they do welcome the opportunity for a scrutiny member, and that was agreed unanimously. So I very much support Austin, and he's put across all the comments that we discussed at the business board. But my final comment is that, you know, and my warning really is that I do not want the business board to become politicised in any way. I think it would be a huge detriment to Cambridge and Peterborough if that were allowed to happen.
So we have the recommendation and I'm moving them from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please? John Holditch. I'm not seeing anybody who's saying they would want to vote against this, so I assume that we have a unanimous support. What I would say, Mr. Adams, is that it is not the place of the combined authority to dictate to the business board how they do their business. The independence of the business board is absolutely vital, and the independence of the chairman is absolutely vital for it to be successful as a conduit to investment into the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough economy. So I think, yes, I thought, you know, consider this as you will and make a decision as a business board. You are certainly not under pressure from the combined authority board to do anything other than keep your independence. If we move on to an extra item that I've exercised my discretion as chairman to accept a report on a review of overview and scrutiny arrangements as addition to the published agenda. This is to enable the board to consider the recommendation from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee in a timely manner. After the 24th of March 2021, the board will not meet again until the 2nd of June 2020, and it is proposed that the work commence before then. Robert Parking, the monitoring officer, will introduce the report, and Anne Gardner, the scrutiny officer, is also available to answer questions. Robert.
Thank you, Mayor Palmer. Yes, so as is summarised, this is seeking, following a formal position from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, this is seeking the consent to commission the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny to carry out a review of scrutiny arrangements of the CPCA. The report sets out the background, including the publication of a recent guidance document from the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny. And indeed, there was an informal session that focused on that guidance. And members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee at their meeting of earlier this week took a formal position to seek that a review occurs. The pressure on time, as has been mentioned, is because of the gap between now and the next formal meeting, and an anticipation on the part of Overview and Scrutiny that, given upcoming elections, and given the idea of a review, it would be beneficial for that review to be able to speak to current members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So that's why it's come to you late as an item. I have Anne Gardner who can talk through elements of the guidance, but also happy to answer any questions that members have. Thank you, Mayor Palmer.
Okay, I've got Councillor Herbert.
Thanks, Mayor. Could I ask, Mayor, if Councillor Dupre could have the right to speak? Because I don't fully think that as board members we've been kept up to date with this, because this has been discussed over a period of 3 weeks and that wasn't referenced to us when we met and had a look at this issue. So Lorna Dupre would be better. I'm second-hand evidence of what their request is. So is that possible, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I've got no objection if the other members of the committee are happy to listen to Councillor Dupre. I mean, I think this is a pretty straightforward ask and a pretty straightforward situation.
Okay. Well, I think if the answer is yes, I'm happy not to even delay matters. But if the answer is unclear, I would ask that Councillor Dupre explains that, please, Mayor.
Okay, well,
can I cut across here, and apologies, I know the size of our agenda, if it adds any reassurance, I'm prepared to propose this proposal, and if that helps us move ahead at speed, I think that might
Very happy with that, because I think there is good reason for it. Thanks, Councillor Campbell.
And are you happy to second, Councillor?
Very happy to second, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Very briefly, I mean, I am happy to support this, particularly because it's a request that has come from Scrutiny Committee. But, you know, I do note that we're just signing off, which is very easy to do, you know, spend of taxpayers' money, several £1,000s to do this. So I will be looking for, you know, I think we can expect to be seeing some change out of this. You know, I hope we're not just going through the motions for the sake of it, and I hope that it will be a good quality piece of work. And you know, I will be watching carefully to see what change comes out of it, because we are just signing off spend of taxpayers' money here on the face of it, bureaucracy. But I hope that it will make a positive difference to the way that the Scrutiny Committee carries out its work.
There are no further speakers. We have a proposal in a second, and I will assume if members are comfortable, we will take that as a unanimous vote and move on to the next item on the agenda. And it has been requested by Councillor Herbert that we bring forward item 5.1. And I think that that's something that members were in agreement with. So we will move to item 5.1 on the agenda. If you'll just give me a very short moment of time, I will scroll to find it.
Page 580 of the electronic pack.
Okay, so we turn to our 5.1, the recommendations of the Housing Communities Committee in relation to the £100 million affordable housing programme. We have 3 questions on this report from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and Councillor du Preez, you're most welcome. Perhaps you could ask your first question.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much to the committee for supporting the request for the work on overview and scrutiny, which I firmly believe will add value and which was unanimously supported by my committee, and they'll be very pleased to hear of your support for that. The first question is, the combined authority agreement and the business case indicates that the authority was to seek funding to supplement the funding received from government for the £100 million affordable housing programme. What steps have been taken by the combined authority in accordance with this requirement? Could a list of these be provided with dates and the outcome and the level of funding secured?
The combined authority supported the successful £219 million Housing Infrastructure Fund investment for the Cambridge Northern Fringe. It also supported initial Housing Infrastructure Fund application for the Wisbech Garden Village project, which has positioned the project for an application for a future round of HIF, if and when the government releases further funding round. We've also raised the profile of the 500 unit scheme at Kennet with government to position that for any future funding that may become available.
Thank you very much. Did you want me to ask my second question?
Yes, please, Councillor du Preez.
The second question is, the recommendations refer to the completion of the £100 million affordable housing programme. Does the board believe that the programme will be completed, i.e. with £100 million received and 2,000 homes delivered by March 2022?
Okay, so I'm sorry, you're slightly different. Your questions are coming at a different order, but that's not a problem. So we can't predict what will happen in the next 12 months, obviously, but we can endeavour to deliver the maximum number of units possible. Up to the 31st of March 2021, there had been 733 housing starts with £26.1 million worth of grant money committed. The programme for 21-2022 already has 782 units approved, with a further £31.8 million of grant being applied. There are then additional new opportunities to be captured within the support of MHCLG from our housing pipeline over the next 12 months. So I think, you know, we're confident that we can reach the 2,000, Councillor du Preez, but I can't give you a cast iron guarantee because I can't predict what the economy is going to do and delivery of housing will be over the course of the next 12 months.
Thank you. And my third question then was, could the Combined Authority Board give A, a best, and B, a worst case scenario for 1, the total amount of money received for affordable housing outside Cambridge by March 2022, and 2, the total number of homes that will be built with that money?
Okay, so we've got discussions ongoing with MHCLG about how the housing programme will progress in its new form. And the CPCA has a programme of 782 units pre-approved by the Housing Communities Committee to progress our start on site during the period April 2021 to March 2022. before any new schemes come forward in its pipeline. I hope that those points answer your questions, Councillor du Preez.
I'm not sure that they do in respect of that third question. We asked for a best and worst case scenario for money received and how homes built.
Well, we've said very clearly that there are already 733 housing starts, and there are a further 782 units approved within the funding, 1.8 million pounds of grants being required. Then there are additional new opportunities to be captured within the support of MHCLG from our housing pipeline over the next 12 months. So I think the numbers there are clear. We already have 733 housing starts and another 782 units approved. So our numbers to deliver above and beyond that is around 400, and by my quick maths, 450, 460. And we feel that with the support of MHCLG that those opportunities will come forward in the next 12 months. But what I can't guarantee, as I said earlier, Councillor du Preez, is what the economy will be doing and what effect COVID will have over the course of that period of time.
Thank you. So your worst case would be just over 1,500 dwellings.
Well, that's what we already have approved,
Yes.
built and approved. So that means if we don't deliver another single house in the next 12 months, that's where we will be. But equally, you know, we're confident that our pipeline shows that we can do that. So I think we've gone round it and given you the clear answer of where we are. Thank you, Councillor du Preez. John Hill, Chief Executive, is going to introduce the report. Roger Thompson, Director of Housing and Development, is also available to answer any technical questions.
Thank you, Mayor. And hopefully my very brief presentation will assist in further clarification on Councillor du Preez's third answer, and hopefully provide some context. I'm presenting the recommendations of the Housing and Communities Committee, which was held last week, which considered the CPCA's £100 million affordable housing programme, specifically, as members are aware, the outcome of the MHCLG review. In essence, the review concluded that the scheme in its current form could not be supported. Secondly, that the 243 units in Northstowe were now ineligible. And thirdly, that the CPCA's role as an agent to the 70 million Cambridge City Council's affordable housing programme would end forthwith. In addition, Mayor, the committee considered the offer from government for funding a revised programme up to March 2022, subject to a strict sequential funding test, criteria related to value for money and additionality, and a more hands-on monitoring regime. The committee has recommended that the board should take up that offer. Just to update members since the meeting and consistent with the recommendation, your joint chief executives have informed MHCLG of the outcome of the committee, of course, subject to today's decision, and will be doing similar following today's meeting. We've had very early discussions, as I indicated to the committee that I would have with MHCLG officials, and then we've discussed a very outlined plan focusing initially on a cash flow based on the sequential funding test, i.e. taking into account any existing funds now made, of course, available by the deallocation of the 243 units in Northstowe, any returning monies from the revolving fund, and any existing approved but unfunded schemes. It's also evident, Mr. Mayor, that MHCLG will consider new schemes beyond those existing schemes which are unfunded, but they must meet the criteria of the revised programme, which I've indicated earlier. Nevertheless, there is still a lot of work to be done, and therefore it is difficult to answer Councillor du Preez's question in terms of the best case scenario. And there's a lot of work to be done in terms of the practical implementation of the scheme. But I will, of course, be reporting those arrangements as they develop, both to Councillor Bowden's committee and to this board. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hill. Members. Councillor van der Beer.
Thank you very much. It is clear, and especially clear from what Mr Hill just been saying, is that what has actually happened here is the government has taken away the £45 million remaining and has offered it back on entirely different terms. You have lost the £45 million and now you're having to work very hard, as Mr Hill just said, to get that money back. We've got two motions coming up, which will I think try and address how we move forward and how we look into this a little bit more, what happened. I mean, I would like to emphasise at this point that you have received information that you have not shared with us and you have not shared with the Housing Committee, in particular this other letter, which you yourself have referred to, which is clearly was clearly the basis of the proposal to the Housing Committee last week, I think it was, I just simply do not understand how we can be expected to make decisions on a question as huge as this without having all of the information in front of us. But anyway, we're going to have a motion on that, so we can come back to that. I want to particularly focus on the impact of this, the potential impact of this. Again, I don't think we've quite explored all the ways it will impact us. As I understand it, looking at the schemes listed for the Housing Committee, if we're not confident about being able to fund any schemes that have not started on site, I think that comes to about 625 homes. So that's the sort of the worst case, is that we do not fund 625 affordable houses. The impact on so that's the impact of potential impact on the end of the grant scheme. My reading of the little bits of information that we have received is that the loan part of the housing programme is now pretty much at an end. Any money that comes back will need to be used for grants before the government gives us any further funds. That's this point, technically called under the sequential test. So we have to have shown that money is used first. So I think I'd be very grateful if certainly if officers could detail exactly what is going to happen with the loan scheme as a consequence of this, on the basis of their understanding of what government has said so far. And that particularly applies to the £100,000 house programme. There is no obvious way of funding it any further, so I do wonder why it's still being talked about, and there's several references to it in today's agenda at various points. It is clearly at an end, and insofar as it was going to get anywhere anyway. I mean, yeah, as I said, we're going to come back to some motions that try to find out what is actually happened. But if we can, if you officers or you, Mayor, would like to give any further information about the reasons that MHCLG has given for taking away this money, that'd be very grateful. I mean, the references that in the letter that we've had so far talk about value for money. And speed delivery. I think there's also been some references to additionality. They're sort of headline concepts, but what does that actually mean in terms of what has been done, how the programme has been managed over this time? And the only way of really getting to the bottom of this, I think, is an independent audit, which we will come back to in the motion. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if there was a question in there, but I think there was some points raised. First of all, the 100 million, the 100k home is absolutely not ended. It will continue. The funding we'll find funding available to make sure we can deliver on it. We've delivered on the concept. It's extraordinarily popular. It's what the public want, and it's exactly what we will give them. And of course, the Minister has agreed to work with us on innovative housing developments. And of course, there is nothing more innovative in the country than the 100k home. I just want to reiterate the point that there is no point talking about taking away 45 million. What the government has said is they will work with us to deliver on our pipeline and extend the deadline to 2022, which was the deadline we were always working. Councillor Pope.
Thank you, Mayor. As the chairman of the Housing and Communities Committee, I'm happy to propose the recommendations from that committee meeting last week. And I'm a little bit disappointed that Councillor van der Veer was politicizing this rather than looking at the actuality of what is on the table at the moment. There are matters of regret, I have to say, with the information that we've received from MHCLG. I think it's a matter of regret that we all share that the 5-year program that we all expected would end at 31st March 2022 now technically ends at 31st March 2021 after 4 years. And I think we all, well, we should regret that the revolving fund initiative has not met with MHCLG's approval. But more than anything else, as far as regret is concerned, I regret it's taken MHCLG so very long, given how well known these issues have been, for them to have taken so very long to have responded to this authority and to the people of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And I think that that has not helped the situation at all. However, whilst the end of the programme is at the end of this month, MHCLG has, by sleight of hand, and Councillor van der Veer mentioned it, having taken away 45 million, they've offered us 45 million. And they have extended the programme to the date which we'd all been working to originally, which is 31st March 2022. And we have to recognise that that means that, especially given that they clearly still want us to deliver on affordable housing, that we are still very much on target to get that 1,515 house building starts, which you mentioned earlier, Mayor, together with other ones which are in the housing pipeline at the moment, which can be added to it. And yes, there is a sequential funding test, and yes, there are various conditions which have been attached to this, but it's by no means unreasonable for us to expect that we will get very close to, if not exceed, the 2,000 house starts that we had planned to do by the 31st of March 2022. But as you say, Mayor, a lot does depend upon the financial situation in the country as a whole and in the housing market in particular. So I am very confident that the discussions which are taking place between MHCLG civil servants and with our chief executives will manage to produce a viable means for us to move forwards. And the reason I'm confident about it is that the conditions which MHCLG have set down are ones which we can reasonably manage to achieve. So I see no reason whatsoever why, with goodwill on both sides, it's not going to be possible for our chief executives to come back in the very near future to say that we have had a complete agreement with the civil servants at MHCLG about how this extended programme will operate and how we will achieve the objectives which we'd set out from the very beginning. So I'm happy to propose the recommendations, Mayor.
Councillor Bowden. Councillor Herbert.
Well, it was interesting that Austin Adams in the earlier item referred to the fact that we should be abiding by the Nolan principles, and they are about transparency, accountability, and clarity. So you're denying us, Mayor, the detail of the response from the government, and then we have Councillor Bowden saying that we're politicising. Well, we are trying to understand this issue as best we can, and we are being denied critical information. And it's not unreasonable, Mayor, to presume that you're trying to kick this ball the other side of the election, because you are personally involved in all of this, as I will explain in a bit more detail. But I do immediately come to the point that if you're not willing to be transparent, then you are failing us, because we have to address this together. And the way it's being handled by excluding board members like me from any information is denying us a collective response. We all signed up to an agreement in 2016, and the surviving members are yourself, Councillor Holditch, Councillor Count, and myself. And we made a commitment to deliver 2,000 affordable housing units. You made that commitment, and contrary to your, if I dare say, flannel in your opening remarks at the beginning of the meeting, there's never been a suggestion, Mayor, that we've ditched this programme. You've hijacked money from it, and I might mention some of that. But we've never had at any stage anything other than a commitment to the best interests of what are 2,000 families, disadvantaged and other families. Now, you might champion house purchase. Some of us will continue to champion rental, including because of the words of the document that it originated from. So all of this originated from what we signed up to. And the words were, Mayor, recognising high levels of growth and exceptional housing market conditions in Greater Cambridge, government will provide a 100 million housing fund to help deliver 2,000 affordable homes. So what has happened since then? We have effectively, currently, despite the brouhaha of Councillor Bowden, we've currently got £15 million out of that original £100 million, because you've loaned out £40 million when you took control. You sacked Councillor, the Councillor Topping, who was in charge. You and Councillor Roberts, who was then leader of East Cambridgeshire, then arranged loans to via your council or in partnership with your council, 6.5 million to for the Hadnam scheme, a monstrous 24.5 million for the RAF Homes scheme, and schemes like 4.5 million to Larag Homes in July 2019, 4.5 million. When you actually look at, did this deliver affordable housing? Between those three schemes, that accounted for £35.5 million, and it delivered, Mayor, 33 affordable homes. So on average, just over £1 million per affordable home. So I contend, Mayor, that this programme went pear-shaped when you hijacked £40 million, and that money wasn't available then to 2,000 people, families in desperate housing need in Peterborough, in Fenland, Huntingdonshire, East Cambridgeshire, and in South Cambridgeshire. So you've never explained whether or not you've had permission for that. You went ahead with those loans without any permission from government. And then since 2018, we have been told, Mayor, consistently that the programme was on track. Well, what are the numbers now? In the MHCLG review, they are only accepting 456 units as of December. You're trying to manicure the figures up to 2,000. And of course I want to have this programme. That's why we spent days in meetings back in 2016 to secure this money. We're the only combined authority, mayoral combined authority, that got affordable housing funding of any significance. And you're right in the middle of this. You do need to publish why this is not being paid. You do need to be far more open. It's quite clear in the letter from Luke Hall that there's still an awful lot of uncertainty whether you'll get any money. So he talks about delivery of affordable housing by the 31st of March 2022. Does he mean that he's actually expecting these to be completed by then? There's nothing in the public domain to say other than that's building those homes by 2022. And when he says that there's been insufficient delivery and insufficient value for money, then how is it suddenly going to change? So I think you've really got to publish this letter. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put down that motion. And as for avoiding scrutiny at Housing Committee, Mayor, you've been to Housing Committee before. I think you just achieved a ruse to avoid the facing up. I mean, I know it's a bit of a trite analogy, but it all sounds like, a bit like a teenager who's crashed a car, the family car, against a tree, and who's running away and doesn't want anybody to know what's gone wrong. Please, Mayor, publish the letter. Let us have this as a board responsibility. We owe it to those 2,000 families. And if we get to 2022 and this authority's not delivered its promises, I think you should be personally going to the next 1,000 people in the housing waiting lists and explaining why it hasn't happened. We know that we've got an affordable housing crisis, and those 40 or so homes that you delivered by loaning out the best part of £35 million is not the way to have delivered it. And you can see why how strongly I feel. It's not personal, James, it's just that we need to sort this, and we need to deliver affordable housing, including for rent, as well as your pet schemes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Herbert. Councillor van der Veer, you're back in for another point.
I believe Councillor Bailey might also have a hand up, but I'm very happy to go now if you like. It's really to come back on a couple of points that you and Councillor Bowden made about the confidence you have in the scheme as a whole and in the £100,000 houses. I just don't know what basis you can express that confidence. We don't have the evidence for that. There's no evidence before us that government will approve the individual schemes we're proposing. If they were concerned about the value for money, about the additionality, about the speed of delivery of these other schemes, why are the remaining schemes in the pipeline going to be any more likely to be sort of approved by government? On the basis of what we have beforehand, before us, I see no evidence for this level of confidence. I'm mystified.
Okay, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Mayor Palmer, and I would very much like to second these recommendations, and I would like to make a few comments from my perspective, having followed this sorry tale for many months now in a lot of detail, and having made my own representations to MHCLG about the behaviour of some employees in their department. I just want to, before I go into my main points, I just want to address some of the things that people have said. I mean, I did just actually hear Councillor Lewis Herbert trying to pretend that it's costing £1 million per home to pay for affordable housing from the revolving fund. That is a complete and utter distortion of the reality. The revolving fund is delivering affordable housing at nil cost to the taxpayer, so £0 per housing unit. And of course, you know, he likes to make it sound as though the £40 million is all permanently tied up all of the time. And I think it's important for people to understand that the revolving housing loan funding is drawn down as it is required in a timely fashion by those that are using it to deliver affordable housing, and paid back in a timely fashion as well. So there is more money available. It is done on a phased basis. Also on the subject of the revolving housing fund, I think it is a matter of huge regret that MHCLG has decided to stop this in the new terms. And I do note with some heavy irony their press release the other day, which was celebrating the fact of the affordable housing delivery at Haddenham Community Land Trust site in East Cambridgeshire, which of course has been funded by the very revolving fund that we are talking about. And MHCLG have been perfectly happy to celebrate the success of that scheme with a press release just the other day, which I noted with heavy irony, given that it is paid for by the revolving fund that they are now seeking to end. I think it's a matter of huge regret. It seems to me that there were three points really to all of this. Issue one from the MHCLG was about delivery dates and the March 21 versus the March 22 discussion. Issue two that they raised only quite recently, just before Christmas, as a new issue, which had never been raised before, was around value for money. And for me, issue three should be, what is the point of the combined authority and the point of difference that the combined authority can bring to delivery of affordable housing that goes beyond just dishing out money via Homes England and grant funding. East Cambs District Council could perfectly happily receive money from Homes England and dish it out as grant funding. That anyone can do that. That is very easy. What we've been trying to do at the Combined Authority, and what I do believe we will continue to do, and we will find ways to make it happen, is to provide innovation and points of difference so that we are offering something new and different. And clearly that takes time to set up. So on issue one, in terms of the date of delivery, it is perfectly clear that we, and Councillor Herbert concedes this point, that we were always all working to March 2022. And MHCLG tied us up in knots for months on end discussing this difference about the delivery date. The Combined Authority was formed in May 2017, and the £100 million Affordable Housing Programme fund was to be released in forward funded tranches over a period of 5 years. And both of those points have been agreed by the civil servants at MHCLG in our meeting prior to Christmas. So given that it would have been unreasonable for the Combined Authority to deliver affordable housing before it had come into being, it is perfectly clear that we were all working to the 2022 date. And I'm pleased that MHCLG is now recognising that in the fact that they are agreeing the March 2022 date. So that is helpful. Of course, what was not helpful is that MHCLG blew two massive holes in the delivery of our affordable housing programme. The first massive hole that they blew in our programme was that they failed to provide the correct legislation for affordable rental homes, which put many months of lack of delivery in terms of affordable rental homes into our delivery programme. That was extremely unhelpful, and despite that, we were still well on track to deliver numbers. And the second huge hole that they blew in our programme is this very issue that we've been talking about, the issue with ongoing different matters being raised by civil servants, not by ministers, on a regular basis for months on end, while they would not let us draw down our next tranche of funding, which clearly put a massive hole in our delivery timetable, 8-9 months, probably more. I've lost count. The second issue that they raised only very recently, really, and late in the day, just before Christmas, was around value for money. And this is an interesting discussion because on the face of it, £100 million affordable housing programme that's required to deliver 2,000 units. And everybody here today so far has been talking about homes having to be built by March 2022. Of course, what the actual document requires is building starts on site. And I think it's important everybody gets that into their heads now. But if on the bare face of it, £100 million divided by 2,000 units gives a value of £50,000 per unit. So, anyone can do those maths. Our programme, our £100 million affordable housing programme, has been delivering at an average cost of £34,000 per unit to date. Clearly that is value for money. It blows apart the value for money that is delivered by the Cambridge City Affordable Housing Programme, which is delivering at £140,000 per unit, recognising that Cambridge City has distinct and unique problems around affordability and land prices, etc. But even so, it is a very, very stark difference. 140,000 in Cambridge City, £34,000 per unit in the rest of the geography. And it also, interestingly, far outstrips the performance of the Homes England level of average level of affordable housing per unit. So by both of those measures, we are delivering significantly in terms of value for money. And what I do note with heavy irony is that the new offer sets the level at £45,000 per unit. So having criticised for delivery against value for money, at our £34,000 average unit price, we're now allowed to go to £45,000 per unit. So, it is interesting. And of course, it is the revolving fund that has helped to keep that average unit cost down, because the revolving fund is delivering affordable housing at zero cost to taxpayers. And I think voters will be very interested in that innovative way of delivering housing, affordable housing, because, we haven't yet charged a precept as a combined authority, and I hope that we continue not to do so. And then the third element that I want to talk about is innovation. And I think this is very important, because we could all, as district council, constituent members and Cambridge City Council, not a consideration for Cambridgeshire County Council, but as constituent members, we could quite happily receive the money from the affordable housing programme or Homes England or wherever and dish it out via grant funding. It is very easy just to purchase an open market home and turn it into an affordable home with grant funding. That's really straightforward. the whole point of having a combined authority is to do things differently. And so what I believe is that the combined authority has delivered innovation, and I really hope will continue to deliver innovation. And it's done that in a number of ways. It's done it with the 100k homes programme, which, you know, I note the other day that Cambridge City is now got 100k homes on its books coming forward. Who would have thought that local residents with links to the area, live and work locally, could buy 100% freehold of a home in Cambridge City for £100,000. What a fantastic innovation of Mayor James Palmer. It was his vision. It's this combined authority that is delivering that. We've got our community land trust sites, and I do know that the Liberal Democrats in East Cambridgeshire do not agree with our model of community land trusts that we're delivering in East Cambridgeshire, but let me assure you they are enormously popular with local residents. The ability for people to live and work and stay in the village and the community in which they grew up is massively popular with residents, and they are well loved and being delivered. And I know that there are more coming through in the rest of the geography. And then I will also include in this the revolving fund, which I truly believe in. It is the right thing to do. It is not correct to present the revolving fund as costing £1 million per affordable home. And the revolving fund loan agreements are delivering 53 affordable houses, Councillor Herbert, not the figures that you talked about. And of course, the money is only used and drawn down as and when it is required. And I believe delivering affordable housing at nil cost to taxpayers is an absolutely positive thing. MHCLG appears to believe in terms of their press release. They are celebrating the fact that people have moved into affordable homes in Haddenham Community Land Trust site, which have been delivered at nil cost to taxpayers in terms of the loan from the revolving fund. So I absolutely am delighted to second this report. I'm not delighted the position that we're in, and I hope, and I will be very pleased to be involved in those future discussions with MHCLG, because I believe that if and when ministers in the Conservative government at Westminster fully understand what we're doing and the innovation that we're bringing forward in Cambridge and Peterborough, that they will absolutely support these future innovative ways to deliver. Thank you for your time and patience.
Councillor Herbert, you're back for more.
Well, I mean, I didn't agree with everything that Councillor Bailey said, but Councillor Bailey spoke well. On a couple of points, the media release that I saw, Councillor Bailey, had nothing to do with MHCLG. It was from Homes England, and whilst I get as confused as anybody else about the paraphernalia of government, I haven't seen MHCLG media release, unless you correct me. So it was Homes England that issued that, not MHCLG. I guess I have to come back on a couple of points, Mayor, because just on the issue of
the sorry to cut in, Councillor Herbert, just on that specific point of personal explanation. I am looking at it now. It's on the .gov.uk website, and it is from Homes England and MHCLG, 17th of March 2021.
Okay, well, I don't know. I'll look at it later. It's a side issue, but I don't think it was more Homes England and East Cambridgeshire that issued the media release, not others. Anyway,
it is from MHCLG. It clearly states.
All right. I am corrected. But if I just come back to a couple of points, I mean, I think the substantial issue is, Mayor, there's three issues I'd like to make. One, you have divided this board. You sacked Councillor Topping. You have not worked as a team. You've basically run housing like you want to run transport, as a one-person operation, albeit that Councillor Bowden has put a shift in more recently. And basically for 2 years, why did we not resolve this with MHCLG? I do not blame civil servants, and I think it's a cheap and nasty line to try and blame public servants. You were in a position to talk to the ministers and to resolve this back in 2019. We've had our money withheld, £45 million for 2 years, and it is not wholly government's fault. It takes two to sort it out. going back briefly to the loans, tying up £40 million for 5 years potentially, because originally some of this money was due to be paid back by now, but because of delays, I'm not expecting it back till 2023, 2024, 2025. My figures are accurate in the selection that I made, Councillor Bailey, because if you look at the odd Larag Homes loan of £4.5 million, there's only 4 affordable homes in that. So that's over £1 million loan per affordable homes. My figure for the East Cambridgeshire scheme, and the report was introduced today by the East Cambridgeshire District Council Chief Executive without reference to his role in some of this, £24.5 million loan. And the original report proposed 15. It may have increased. And similarly, the Haddenham scheme was 14. So my calculation is the Haddenham scheme costs over £300,000 per loan, per affordable home in loan, and the RAF scheme is well over £1 million, and similarly the Larag Home scheme. So yes, this money isn't spent, but we've had really no control of getting it back. And I don't expect that any of it will be back of any significance unless I'm corrected by the deadline for delivery. But my central point, Mayor, is that we should be working as a team on this, and I'm happy to put a shift in, as I have with Councillor Bailey, in challenging civil servants when they said that 2021 was the deadline. So I want us to succeed, but I don't see that you can justify not publishing the fuller information, because you're actually denying residents, you are denying people in need of homes, and you're denying the maximum potential of getting this money by keeping it secret. I'm sure it's been shared with Conservative councillors, but then why should you? Why should you just be able to decide not to publish and share this? We should be working on this together, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holditch.
Mr. Mayor, none of this crap that's being talked this morning is building a single house. I want to take Lewis, and I think it was probably Lewis and myself, and probably yourself, in the negotiations it was for this deal on affordable housing. If you remember, it was something like 100 million across Cambridgeshire, Suffolk, Norfolk and Peterborough. Then we decided we'd go into a Cambridgeshire and Peterborough team, and the 100 million was still on the table. I argued with Councillor from Cambridge that wasn't enough, because Cambridge's situation was completely different in terms of the cost of housing in Cambridgeshire. And the Lord that would chaired the meeting, whose name escapes me at the moment, went up to 125 million. We kept saying that ain't enough.
O'Neill was his name.
All right, Lord Neil there. He went up to 125. His civil servant said no, and we pushed and pushed and pushed, and we got to 175, and 75 was to go to Cambridge City, and the rest of it across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And the comment to his civil servant says, "You can't take that decision." He said, "I just have." And I think they've been trying to undermine that decision ever since. So I do blame them. I think we're all agreed that the agreement was, and it ended in 22, and it was a five-year agreement, and now they're trying to say it's a 4. And the delay was something in the region nearly 12 months that we couldn't build affordable rented housing, because that was a government mistake in not putting it in the deal in the first place. And in Peterborough alone, I think that cost us about 175 houses that had it. Those houses were still built because Homes England picked them up, and I believe they picked them up at something like a £60,000 a house when we were only looking at £35,000 a house. Now, I wrote to the CLG and told them they need to have a good look at themselves. I don't say there's been mistakes on both sides, but the argument that we're having this morning, in my view, is wrong and irrelevant. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Holditch. Councillor Bowden, we have a proposer, and Councillor Bailey has seconded, so I'm happy to move to the vote. and we will go through one by one, and starting with Mr. Adams.
Yes, so James, yeah, accept.
Councillor Bailey.
4.
Councillor Bowden.
4.
Councillor Count.
4.
Councillor Herbert.
Abstain.
Councillor Holditch.
4.
And Councillor van der Veer.
Abstain.
So that's carried, and rightly so. I think there's been an inordinate amount written about this, and quite a lot of that is because there was a letter leaked to the public, to the press, which only had half a story. And I think that there's a danger in doing business through the press rather than through committee. When this came to committee with the full evidence, and the committee were given all the evidence, the committee made a decision based on the facts rather than the hyperbole. And we've certainly heard a lot of hyperbole this morning, there's no doubt about that. The reality is that, as Councillor Holditch and Councillor Bailey and Councillor Bowden all said, this was a 5-year deal, and the government have accepted that it will be a 5-year deal. They've given us the extra year. What they haven't given us back is the almost 12 months that they stopped us delivering housing, and that hasn't been mentioned. I think that's a shameful situation because it's affecting those very people that Councillor Herbert has mentioned. And I think we probably lost around 500 homes start on site because of that delay. I think ultimately government are working with us to fund the pipeline of homes, and we are quite happy to do so under their scrutiny, and quite happily will go along that route. And I'm sure that we will deliver. Certainly, we've got 1,500 homes in the pipeline, and I'm sure we'll deliver on those and the opportunities there to deliver more, and I expect to do so. The clear points made by Councillor Bailey on the innovation of the rolling fund. The rolling fund was put up very clearly at the beginning of this to create more wealth out of the money that we've been given. So £40 million has been invested into housing in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. It's brought forward market housing and social housing. That's the key thing. And I believe that I'm right in saying that £40 million will pay back 25 million in the next financial year, which will be reinvested into housing in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So from 55 million, this authority has created 95 million pounds worth of investment into housing, and created extraordinarily innovative and unique schemes for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And the job of a mayor, the job of a combined authority, is to try and do things better than central government policy. And there are central government policies that aren't necessarily suitable for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And I would counter that the social housing policy of giving grant money to housing associations is 25, 30 years out of date for this authority. The reality of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is, in normal times, and I know we're COVID affected now, we have very high employment, but low wages across the county. And that means that young people in particular struggle to get on the housing ladder, which is why we brought forward the 100k home. And I don't really care about political argument over a fund that the public aren't really interested in, because I know what they are genuinely interested in. And the applications for the Fordham homes, if replicated across the whole county, would indicate that 20,000 people would like to own a 100k home. And let's not forget what we're here to do. We're here to create bespoke policies for our county and bespoke policies for the people of our county. And not a single person on this call, not a single politician in Cambridgeshire can argue with me that the policy on housing run by national government of any colour over the last 30 years has benefited the hardworking people of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. They are always the ones that are left out. The low paid, hardworking people are always the ones that are left out of policy when it comes to housing. And I'll be damned if I'm going to leave about a policy when it comes to the housing delivery that we will have in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So I absolutely defend the rolling fund. It was absolutely the right thing to do. It created an extra £40 million of investment into this county. It created 95 million from 55. I absolutely am prepared to work alongside government. It has been almost impossible for this authority to deal with the individuals involved over the course of the last 12 months or more. They have not been happy to sit down and discuss ways to solve problems that they have brought to us, and they have continually moved the goalposts on the issue. The big issue 6 months ago was 4 years or 5 years. Councillor Bailey said that changed at Christmas to value for money. And even on value for money, as has been said, the value for money that we're offering across the combined authority, without even including the houses delivered at no cost to the taxpayer, is significantly better than Homes England are offering across the country, and miles better than Councillor Herbert's Council House Fund in the city of Cambridge. So I accept this. I think it's frustrating. I think it could have been handled better by central government, in my view, but I believe that we will do everything we can to hit that 2,000 target. But beyond that, over and above that, our ambition for improving the housing opportunities for people in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is absolute, and we have the bespoke policies to do so going into the next term.
I have a point of order, Mr. Mayor, if that's all right.
Yes, Councillor Van der Meer.
Procedural point, really. I mean, you just gave a speech that is very relevant to what we were just discussing, and I'm just wondering why that was not made during the debate. What basis you're making a speech after the vote has happened?
Well, I think it's this: the vote had happened, and it summed up the vote. That the members of the authority had their opportunity to talk, and as mayor, I spoke after the vote rather than influencing the vote itself. That's a position of neutrality that a chairman is allowed to have, I believe. What I didn't do is try and influence the vote, which is entirely appropriate. I mean, you think if you'd have been to the meetings that we've had, and I appreciate that as a deputy leader, you don't always have the opportunity, Councillor Van der Meer, but if you'd have been to the meetings we've had over the last 4 years of the combined authority, that's always the way that I sum up after the vote, because there is, and you will also note that that it's rare that I put my hand up to vote in a vote either, because there is a neutrality to the position of chairman. So I think the question was put by Councillor Bowden: would we be prepared to take item 8.1, which I think is appropriate because it is related to this item. So we will move. Now, this is a motion from Councillor Smith.
And 8.2 as well, Mayor.
Yeah, we'll come to that, Councillor Herbert. Let's do them in order, though, shall we? So this is a motion from Councillor Smith. Now, Councillor Smith is not here. Unless somebody is prepared to put this motion in her stead, then this motion will not be taken. Is anybody prepared to put this motion in the...
Well, I would. Sorry, I spoke out of line, sorry.
I put my hand up, but yeah, I'd be very keen to. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Van der Meer, you can read the words that Councillor Smith has put forward as your motion.
Thank you. I won't read it. It's been published, so it's out there. But I think, as we were discussing in the debate, in fact, it's very clear that we do not fully understand what has happened. We do not know all the information that the Combined Authority has on this matter, and the interventions that have taken place and discussions that have taken place. I think the best way of getting that information out to the public and increasing our own understanding of what has happened would be to get someone from outside, an independent person, to do an audit of this. So I would very much like to propose that we do that with this motion. Obviously, it should happen very quickly. There's no point waiting till the next meeting and until we have sort of these discussions happening, because otherwise we do not have that long. This is a very urgent matter.
Okay, and I assume, Councillor Herbert, you would like to second that?
I do.
And would you like to reserve your right to speak?
I'll reserve my right for a little while.
Okay. Any comments? Councillor Bailey.
A question of clarification to Councillor Van der Meer as the mover of the motion. Does he have any concept of the cost of this audit, independent audit?
No, I don't think. It depends on how willing the Combined Authority is to provide the information, I would have thought. It shouldn't be too costly. I think, given the significant cost amounts of money at stake. I think at this stage, and given the urgency of it, I think we can certainly rely on officers to ensure that an audit of this nature is provided at a very reasonable cost.
And you think the money that is at stake is dependent on an independent audit, do you, Councillor van der Veer?
Yes, because we have not been given any confidence that the Command Authority at the moment is able to convince government to give us a further 45 million. And I think understanding what has happened would significantly help us with that.
Through you, Chair. Sorry to be posing direct questions. Members of the board, apologies for that. It's not correct. I can't agree. I can't agree with this. Councillor van der Veer seems to believe that carrying out an independent audit at unknown cost is going to somehow deliver the outcome of the recommendations that we've just passed or not. Presumably an independent audit would take at least some months to investigate and deliver. I don't know if Councillor van der Veer is, I noted that he abstained on the last item and therefore that he didn't vote in favour of bringing forward the 45 million under the new terms of MHCLG. However, he now appears to be looking to slow that down even further by carrying out an independent audit, which he wants to await the outcome of, because he thinks that the 45 million that is at stake is dependent upon it. I will not be supporting this. I don't support spending yet more taxpayers' money on this issue. Every single piece of email, correspondence, meetings has been regularly and openly shared with the board members. If Councillor Smith hasn't passed those on to Councillor van der Veer, that's a matter of regret, but they have been made available, with the exception noted of the private letter that was sent from Luke Hall to Mayor Palmer, which is the subject of another discussion. Up until that point, every single piece of correspondence, I believe, had been shared, and we've only had to ask officers for it to be readily given. I've had more information on this than anybody could hope to possibly imagine. We've had a full discussion about it, and I don't think spending yet more of taxpayers' money, and according to Councillor van der Veer, to further hold up making the new arrangements with MHCLG, which he has just failed to support, bringing forward 45 million pounds for the affordable housing programme. No, I'm sorry, I can't support it.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much indeed, Mayor. I have to agree with the comments made by Councillor Bailey. And I think Councillor van der Veer is just, again, playing politics here, and he's even contradicting himself. In this motion, which is being put forward, we are told about the scheme being closed with the potential loss of £45 million. But Councillor van der Veer himself, at the beginning of this meeting, said that it was almost sleight of hand that 45 million was being taken away and 45 million was being offered to us. And so to claim in this motion that there is the potential loss of £45 million is, whilst technically it could be argued to be correct, is in fact misleading. It's like me saying potentially the sun won't rise tomorrow because there might be some sort of astronomical event taking place. Yes, potentially it might, but it's not very likely. And Councillor van der Veer himself admitted that the 45 million is basically being transferred from one scheme to the extension of that scheme by government. What's being given with one hand is being taken away with the other. Additionally, if there was ever a time not to have an investigation like this, it's when you're in the middle of the negotiations to ensure that the new scheme comes into force and comes into force as quickly as possible. And that's what we were just voting on. And I was sorry that Councillor van der Veer didn't support the attempts which are being made to ensure that we do get that £45 million back. But what's appropriate here is for the Joint Chief Executives to have the conversations with MHGLC civil servants to ensure that all of the details for the extended scheme are agreed, and we should have no difficulty in doing that, and for that to be reported back to the next meeting of the Housing and Communities Committee. And once we have that, that can then be discussed at the next meeting of the board if necessary, and I think then we would be talking about facts rather than talking about pure speculation.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Councillor Herbert.
It was indeed strange for a minister to send you, Mayor, a letter only 6 weeks before an election in these terms. And when you complain about us or whoever did supply this, and we've already had a discussion on this, whoever did supply it to the media, what have you got to hide? I mean, so in terms of this motion, I don't think an internal or a sort of independent audit would delay it. I do think, Mayor, that rather than trying to blame all of this onto civil servants, which I think is wholly inappropriate, given that we're now talking to civil servants to try and get the money, we should just get them involved in this, because the letter from Luke Hall says, the letter that is public, Councillor Bowden, you might have a different letter, doesn't say that we've got the 45 million. It says the programme has been stopped as it was, and you can now bid for funds. It does say that that would require both greater delivery and also greater value for money. And as Councillor Bailey has said, there's been a price tag put on that. So I don't see an audit delaying the process. I do see the need for us to have a far better relationship, Mayor, with civil servants than you've had over the last 2 years. They are our paymasters, whether we like it or not sometimes, and an audit involving them would be to the good of getting the best amount of money. And to Councillor Bowden saying that we don't support it, just because we don't vote for the way you want to do things doesn't mean that we don't share exactly the same passion to secure affordable housing. And we are sorely disappointed about where we are at now.
Point of personal explanation, Mayor, if I may. Councillor Herbert just cited me having said something about the value for money element, and just to make it absolutely clear, I cited my surprise that the government, having criticised our value for money at a delivery rate of £34,000 per unit, was now suggesting that we would be allowed to go up to £45,000 per unit. By anybody's sensible calculation, it's perfectly clear that we've been delivering value for money. It's just a nonsense.
If I could add my point of personal explanation, Mayor, I never mentioned Councillor Bailey. I don't know where you got your opinion from.
I think you'll find if you review the footage, Councillor Herbert, you absolutely did. You did.
Well, I'm happy to.
Can we move on from across the floor arguments? Councillor Van der Veer is probably ready to sum up on his motion.
Yeah, I'm happy to sum up. I would like first to make a couple of points of clarification. One is that there is nothing in this motion that would cause any delay in any other activities of the combined authority on this. And I don't see why it would in any way have those consequences. Separately to that, I think I was very clear when I spoke earlier. The government has closed the combined authorities housing programme. It is offering us money on a different basis through different mechanisms that we don't know yet because we are still negotiating them. It is entirely accurate to say that this current scheme has been closed. I think it's on the contrary an attempt to fudge it to say that it's just simply a continuation, an extension of the same scheme. It is quite different. And the fact that the actions on the consequences for the loan revolving loan fund do amply demonstrate that. So it would assist both public confidence in this, in the combined authority's ability to deliver the housing, and actually assist in our own discussions amongst ourselves and with civil servants, if we had a fuller understanding of what has actually happened, and that is what this proposal is making.
So we have a proposer and a seconder, and I'll take you to the vote. Mr. Adams.
Against.
Councillor Bailey.
Against.
Councillor Bowden.
Against.
Councillor Counts.
Against.
Councillor Herbert.
For.
Councillor Holditch.
Against.
And Councillor Van der Veer.
For.
Okay, so that motion is lost, and we move on to item 8.2, which we'll carry forward, and this is a motion from Councillor Herbert.
Thank you, Mayor. If I had a bottle of red wine, Mayor, for every time I've heard a politician, including national and local politicians, saying the public aren't interested in this, Well, they are. I think the public are interested, Mayor, in how you've had personal control over £100 million of housing funding and how it's and the state of where it's at. Of course, the story is complicated, but to say that we couldn't have used £100 million better, I could have, but I think collectively we could have achieved a lot more with it. As I said earlier, you currently have only £15 million in the bank for the programme that the leaders signed up to back in 2016. So the public are interested, Mayor, and I think that the media, that the councillors around the county, that the people who currently are on housing waiting lists, you may not have checked the figures, but I checked the figures for Peterborough. 1,900 families are on their waiting list, as Councillor Holditch will know. 1,500 in Cambridge City, 1,500 in South Cambridgeshire, probably about 10,000 families. Now, if you continue to pursue a policy which puts certain types of affordable housing forward, and you don't actually work with us as a team, you are letting those families down. Not all of them, but certainly a large number. And I don't have confidence from what has been evidenced that we know what's going to happen next. You claim that there's going to be 45 million paid back and that it's all going to be fine. But so I've not heard you at Housing Committee, and I've not heard any argument today why you should not publish this other letter. I look forward to hearing what the reasons are. It's not surprising that the person on the Chatteris omnibus will think that you're trying to kick the ball beyond the election. And I don't think that that accords with openness, and I don't think it accords with getting the best results with £100 million, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Herbert. Do you have a seconder? Councillor van der Veer, you wish to speak?
I'll be doing all right, thanks.
Okay. Any other speakers at all? Okay. Well, I mean, I'm quite happy to go through this, to be honest with you, and it's very frustrating to hear some of the spin that's been put on that recent statement by Councillor Herbert. There's been no ignoring of the 100 million fund, nor has there been any ignoring of delivery of the houses necessary. And as we've said already today, had we not had an almost 12-month delay by MHCLG, had they not continually changed the goalposts, I'd be very confident that we would be well ahead of our target by now anyway. And I'm confident that we will hit that 2,000 target. So I think that's the first thing. Secondly, the letter that was sent to me by the Minister was a private letter. And if I was to release that letter, I would need the Minister's consent. We're talking to civil servants about that at this time. But at the moment, that private letter, I believe, is rightfully private. And that's the way that it will stay until I have permission from the Minister to do otherwise. But the reality is all the facts in that letter pertinent to this situation have been released and been part of Housing Committee. And the civil servants working alongside us have accepted the decision of Housing Committee, and now they will accept the decision of the Combined Authority Board. So to say there is misinformation is a complete and utter nonsense. To say that that we've not delivered or not been upfront and frank with the contents of the letter with the Housing Committee is a complete and utter nonsense. I get Minister letters constantly, and I don't put them out in the public eye, and it's not appropriate to do so, and so I tend not to do so, and that's just the reality. And this situation is no different to any other. Councillor van der Veer.
Oh, sorry, I think someone else might want to speak first, and I'd like to come in at the end if that's all right.
I think you said you wanted to come back later. Okay, Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Mayor. I note that not that much is now being said about the actual motion which we have in front of us, but the same arguments are being repeated that we've heard in the last two agenda items. But one thing which I do object to, and you talked about misinformation, Mayor, is the repetitive claim which we see in this motion that we have lost up to £45 million in government funding for new affordable homes. And Councillor van der Veer made the very clear point This is a matter of money being taken away from one programme and being given to an extension to that same programme. And for the claim to be made so boldly in this motion that there's a loss of up to £45 million in government funding doesn't become any truer the fact that it's repeated time and time again.
Thank you, Councillor van der Veer.
Thank you. I think that final point, I think I've addressed it adequately. There is clearly the risk of a loss of up to 45 million, so it's entirely true to say it in that way. You described the letter as being private. I presume it didn't include details about christenings and weddings or something like that. I mean, it was a letter from a minister acting as a minister to you as the mayor, as the elected mayor. I don't see how in that makes it private. If it didn't say private and confidential on it, then I don't see on what basis you have to withhold it. You say that it's a matter for the relevant minister to release it. Have you asked that question directly? And you also say that the relevant information was given to the Housing Committee. I think the problem there is that we have no basis for accepting that, and the only way we'll be reassured of that is if we have that letter. Are you saying that all of the information was in there, or only the most relevant bits? So you have indeed, to some extent, cherry-picked it. Is that what you're saying? So.
I think that's a direct question. Of course, you have to remember that what we do in Housing Committee, and all decisions on housing, by the way, Councillor Herbert, do not come from the Mayor. They go through Housing Committee, of which I'm not a member. So I can't exactly be accused of having a control of the 100 million fund as alleged by your spurious declaration. What I'd say to you, Councillor van der Veer, is the information given to Housing Committee from the contents of the letter have been accepted by the civil servants. For you to suggest that there is anything else that's been given to Housing Committee that's not appropriate, I think if I was trying to dupe civil servants, we would know about it pretty damn quickly. And certainly that is not the case. What the case is that Housing Committee acted with all the information necessary to deliver the vote that they did, that brought this matter to this committee, and that you and Councillor Herbert have abstained on not supporting the delivery of housing from this fund. So I think that's really answered your question. There are no further speakers. I have a proposer and a seconder.
And I've got the right to sum up.
Oh, you have, but you hadn't indicated, Councillor Herbert, but you're more.
Well, I was assuming that you as chair would ask me.
Well, sometimes even I need a nudge from
anyway, so I won't take long, but you have said in a mixture of words that there is some consideration by civil servants to releasing it. I do think rather than us play sort of guess the sentence, which is what we are needing to do, because you're denying access to what is, I believe, publicly legitimate information, as Councillor van der Veer said. There isn't any love and money and or personal affection in this. This is essentially a business letter about why the 45 million as proposed isn't coming forward. I do go back to the original programme, Mayor, and we did sign up to a deal which you changed in 2018, including after you sacked Peter Topping, and you made other decisions that year. You sacked the chief executive, you sacked our finance director, you effectively got rid of all the portfolios, and you've been basically aiming to run this largely as a one-man combined authority. And that's effectively the way you're putting it to us today. You're saying it was a personal letter to me and therefore you're not having it. But we were set up as a mayoral combined authority. And I know from talking to colleagues in other parts of the country that they work together, Mayor, and they are actually open and transparent. And to also sort of snidely say that we shouldn't have, the other letter shouldn't have gone into the public domain. We need more transparency. It's about being accountable. So, but it is in particular of value to people like myself. We would fully want to deliver the other 1,544 homes that the government didn't count as having been delivered by the combined authority in December. And it would help, Mayor, if we had the letter. And it accords with the wonderful words of Austin Adams earlier in the meeting when he talked about the Nolan principles. Thank you.
So we have a proposer and a seconder, and I'm happy to go to the vote. Mr. Adams.
Against.
Councillor Bailey.
Against.
Councillor Bowden.
Against.
Councillor Count.
Against.
Councillor Herbert.
For.
Councillor Holditch.
Against.
Councillor van der Veer.
Well,
Okay, so that motion is lost, and we go back to item 2.1 in the agenda. Councillor Count, you've indicated to speak.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. A couple of points. The first is I must make you aware that I'm very sorry. It's a very busy agenda. I do have to go at 2 o'clock. I made you personally aware earlier on. And despite that heavy agenda and the fact that I've got to go at 2, can I ask or request that we just take a very small comfort break, not just for a comfort break, but for a breath of fresh air now that we've dealt with what was a difficult item, so we can come back to the rest of the agenda with a fresh pair of eyes.
Yes, so that's exactly what I was going to suggest, Councillor Councillor. Can I suggest we reconvene at 12:30, if that's suitable for everybody? Councillor Bowden.
Mayor, given the length of the agenda and the fact that I don't think we'll get through this today, to be quite honest, whilst remaining quorate, because I will need to go as well at a certain point, is it possible for you to consider reprioritising the agenda so that those decisions which need to be made, for example, with Councillor Count, an example being item 3.3, that those are brought forward so that they will actually be discussed before Councillor Count goes?
Yeah, well, I will have that discussion with the officers in the 15-minute break. Okay.
Very briefly, Mayor, I have requested for the last 4 months that, or more, 6 months, that we actually meet monthly, and our agendas are unduly heavy, and I hope that in future we can have monthly meetings, but I leave it to you to try and work out how to bring the business to a sensible conclusion.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement, Councillor Herbert. The ambition was to have bi-monthly meetings to try and spread the load or take the load off individual council leaders. But I think that the amount of work the Combined Authority does, the amount of delivery into Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, means that our agendas are significant. So we are looking into that post-May.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. So we will resume at 12:30.
Roshenda, could you just give me a quick call? Thank you.
Robert, John, could I ask you to stay on the line? John Alsop.
Yeah, well, I think are we still public?
If we are still
the meeting will still be public. So do we want to have a?
Okay, then we'll reconvene a phone call, then a conference.
Should we go on to Teams?
We did.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope that we have the numbers required. Robert, can we take down this? Robert, can I introduce Robert Parking, who's going to request of the committee and a sort of structure that can take us through the main items on the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Palmer. So options before the committee are, we've got a number of items which are special.
Just hold a second, because we're not
Sorry.
quite there yet. We're
Excuse me,
waiting
sorry.
Okay, I think we're still waiting for Councillor Herbert. Councillor Holditch, I think, is doing some press at the moment, so we'll just wait for Councillor Herbert to come back, and then we'll kick off. Councillor Herbert, if you can hear me, can you turn your video on, please? Well, it is now 12:31, so continue, please, Robert, and we'll
Thank you, Mayor Palmer. So we've looked at the running order, and we have some options essentially for the board. We could reorder to hear those items requiring special voting are 3.1 to 3.3, then 4.1 through to 4.6 and 4.7. So the options are to reorder in that fashion to enable that business to be done, and insofar as we run over the time in the meeting where members are having to leave, the options are either to adjourn and meet at the next available immediate opportunity. That we would look to timetable this week, which I appreciate may present quite considerable challenges to members. The alternative is that for that other category of items that aren't dealt with, the simple majority items, that we may rely upon your decision-making power. But what we do is we invite members of the board to give comments perhaps via email, so that they can be taken into account when you're exercising that mayoral power. Those are the options. Happy to run through them
I'd like to propose an additional one, which is an informal meeting if we can't rearrange a meeting, because I'm not happy to be not involved in a collective view on some of these issues. Effectively, that denies us any input, because it's, with respect, up to the mayor whether or not any points are accepted, and they can be easily dismissed without explanation.
So I think with what Councillor Herbert has said, I think there's a valid point to that. Councillor Count.
Yeah, the sooner we get started, the sooner we'll get through what we can get through. Those remaining items that we don't get through, if we can agree to delegate a positive yes decision, unless every single person has a right of veto to take over to the next meeting. So if one person says, I'm sorry, I want this aired in the public domain and I want my right to vote against us like it, because many of these, I think there might be some clarity that goes backwards and forwards, but then they can be accepted. I know there's only one from me that I would possibly even dream of voting against today, but there are some questions of clarity that I could on some points.
Okay, I think what we will do, given the slight conjecture there, a difference of opinion, let's take the items on the agenda that need a decision and let's get on with them now. Then we will look at a solution beyond that that we can agree with as members through the contact, ideally to have another meeting in the next week or so to cover these items. I think that using mayoral powers would probably not necessarily be the right way. So I think, but what we will do, with bearing in mind the point you've made, is we will go on there to item 3 on the agenda. 3.1, which is the CAM update, and we have a scrutiny committee meeting. Appoint Councillor Dupre.
Thank you very much. We have 3 questions on item 3.1 from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. The first question is, please will the combined authority provide comparative data for chief executive and other senior officer remuneration packages for other projects similar to CAM?
Yeah, so during the initial stages of the search for the CEO of OneCam, a number of suitable candidates from a wide range of similar organisations were considered for long listing. These organisations included Thames Tideway, Crossrail, HS2 and TfL. The average salary expectation of those on the long list was £255,000 per annum, plus an average bonus of 30%. The shortlist was selected based on experience and capability to deliver the project, and their average salary expectation was £288,000, plus an average bonus of 45%. A number of other candidates working inside and outside of the UK were also initially considered, but salary expectations significantly exceeded our budget.
Thank you. Second question is, in regard to the performance-related pay, could the criteria that will be used to assess the CEO and other senior staff be provided to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee?
Yeah, so the performance of the CEO and other staff will be assessed by the OneCam board in relation to the achievement of OneCam limited annual objectives, which will be set out in the business plan. The business plan is a requirement of the shareholder agreement, and it is being developed now and will be submitted to the Combined Authority Board in June. The senior staff performance and assessment process and annual outcome will be made available to Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you. And the third question is, can the Combined Authority provide the Overview and Scrutiny Committee with confirmation of funding currently in place for CAM and the security of the funding for the entire project?
So the Overview and Scrutiny Committee will be aware that the board approved the medium-term financial plan at its meeting in January. The plan earmarks capital funding of £2 million to support the activities of OneCam Limited in 2021-2022, with a further £5 million in 2021-22, 6.5 million in 2022-23, and 6.5 million in 23-24 to support the development of the CAM business case. These earmarked allocations being subject to the approval by the Combined Authority Board. The funding and financing delivery strategy for the CAM is currently being drafted and will appraise the options for securing the necessary funding going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the report contains an appendix which is exempt from publication under paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, in that it would not be in the public interest for this information to be disclosed. Information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding the information, if any members of the board wish to discuss the information contained in this appendix, we will need to consider whether to go into private session. Does any member want to discuss the exempt appendices? There is a shake of the heads across the board. So we go to Kim Sawyer.
Thank you, Mayor. And given how short we are on time, I'm going to immediately introduce Chris Sexton and ask him to give you a very short summary of the report.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim, and thank you to everybody. The CAM team has had a very productive couple of months. As the Mayor said in his opening remarks, the Design Concepts competition has delivered very exciting and innovative concepts from 3 companies, Dromos, Mott MacDonald and Aegis. It was a novel process, inviting innovative ideas for the CAM without a contractual commitment on either side to take forward the designs, but the option to do so if we wanted to. And I'd expect a Design Concepts competition to be widely adopted by major government clients in future. And it does solve one of the challenges which the industry faces, which is once you procure the designer for a project, you tend only to get their ideas. As the Mayor said in his introduction, each company has produced a short video showcasing their ideas, and these are available on the CPCA website. The CAM delivery strategy is in its final stages of production. The principal authors have been Deloitte, and CPCA officers will be considering it in April, and it's intended to present it to the CPCA board at the first meeting in the new civic year in June. And this will include the funding and finance strategy. And it charts the path to producing the programme business case for the CAM. It pulls together all the previous business case work and a set of sub-strategies, including funding, transport and housing. And actions will be taken forward into the One CAM business plan, which, as you've just heard, will also come to the Combined Authority Board in June. Informal stakeholder engagement with the Treasury, Department for Transport and Homes England has begun. To support the production of the business case, 2 new contracts are being procured, one for the business case, funding and finance, and the other for engineering and environment, which includes the transport strategy. And this is where we'll take up ideas from the design concepts competition. The evaluation of tenders is now complete, and you're being asked to delegate the necessary authority to the chief executives to award the contracts, approve task orders, and novate the contracts to One CAM Limited in due course. The identity of the winning companies will remain commercially confidential until the end of the standstill period on the 9th of April. On finance, the One CAM board is requesting this board to approve the £2 million capital funding for One CAM Limited operational costs in 2021-22, and this includes One CAM staff, recharge CPCA staff time, IT, legal costs, recruitment and audit costs. In terms of organisation, the programme's now set up with the CPCA as the programme sponsor and One CAM Limited as the delivery body, with its own board chaired by Lord Mayor, an executive team and internal governance. Your approval is sought for 3 senior appointments to One CAM Limited, the CEO, whose identity is exempt due to market sensitivity, the Chief Financial Officer, Tim Keogh, and the Director of Strategy and Sponsorship, Joe Daly. These roles will be vital to leading the programme business case through its various stages over the next year. And with your agreement, I'll be leading the One CAM executive team until these roles are filled. And that's all I have to say.
Councillor Kell.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the introduction. I need some help in understanding one particular recommendation. So under recommendation B, there are 2 lots, lot 2, lot 3. I understand lot 3, the funding and finance advisors. I don't understand what it is that we're buying in lot 2. It's got a description, but I don't fully understand what we're getting for that and how that relates to the 3 designs that we've got coming forward. So can you help me, please? I'm a layman, so put in simple terms what I'm getting for my money.
Okay, yeah, I'll certainly cover that. Councillor Count. So a normal procurement would have been done without the 3 concept designs, and we procure a designer for the One CAM transport scheme, and that is the company that we're about to appoint. What the design concepts competition has done is to invite 3 companies to do a pretty short piece of work, which will produce ideas and concepts which can be fed through into the design for One CAM. We have not asked them to, we have not procured from them the design for the transport system itself. So if you like, the design concepts are a feeder into the design for the integrated transport system that the lot 2 consultants will produce. There's a huge amount of detail over the course of the next 9 months or so. The lot 2 consultant will look at all different types of options, and you saw some of the options set out in the paper. They'll consider those, and they'll come forward with the option which they think is the most technically correct and affordable and sustainable and innovative and value for money. That's a huge exercise which the lot 2 consultant will be doing, and they'll just take ideas from the 3 design concepts. The product from the lot 2 consultants will form the backbone of the technical aspects of the business case, which will be written by the lot 3 consultants. So the technical element of the business case will be written by the lot 2 consultant.
Okay, if I may, through you, Chair, I think I've grasped this now. We've got 3 ideas come forward, and we may take one or a mixture of all 3 to the next stage. But it's not necessarily those individual designers who we're taking it forward. It's some expert that can do this for us. So my question is, because we want OneCam to deliver this, but we may well have a very quite an opinion on what's being shown at this present point in time. Is how are you going to involve us in that filtering stage to inform whoever wins lot 2 about what our thoughts are on those 3 designs as they build up their case to a final idea?
Okay, well, I might. That's very much a sort of. I said in my piece that's very much a sort of sponsor issue. So I might just ask Kim to cover that.
Thank you, Councillor Count. The benefit of bringing Chris Sexton in at this stage of the programme is to enable us to start developing our sponsor role. And I'm working on that at the moment, looking at those areas where the CPCA would want continued involvement in the development of the programme, those areas where they're happy for the OneCam Limited to really get on and deliver for them and make use of the expertise that's on that board to take this programme much further forward. And so we're in the process of developing all those ideas. Those will come to a future leaders meeting for discussion with you about whether you're happy about the role that I've carved out for the combined authority within the programme meets your expectations.
So, well, this morning we're being asked to delegate authority. So do I have your assurance before the winner of lot 2 is engaged and moved forwards that there will be a touch point, whether it's formally or informally, with the members of the board on our thoughts on the 3 designs?
Yes, there most definitely will be, Councillor Count. Yeah.
Thank you, I'm satisfied. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Councillor Van der Merwe.
Yes, thank you. So I have a range of comments. Do want to just start off with whether we want to structure them at all, or whether I just go through it all. And I mean, if you're happy to not structure the debate, that's fine with me. So I will try and keep my comments following the sort of structure of the report, if that's okay. So the concept designs that were done. As I understand it, the only information published so far are some sort of PowerPoint presentations that are on the CAM Metro website. There was a reference there to videos. So it's a question really: what other information is there available on these? Because I take it from comments that were reported in the press this morning from you, Mayor Palmer, that there is a lot more. Because you, for example, said, I think the work that Mott MacDonald have done, looking at the pros and cons of having tunnels or not, and coming down very clearly on the side of the tunnel, is the best solution. You also said, when Mott MacDonald said you can raise at least 1 billion with land value capture alone, I think it is a great leap forward. So none of that information is in the information so far published. So I'm rather confused about where that has come from, because I would have expected the information to be released all at the same time. It is also remarkable that the 3 schemes have very little about tunnels at all in them. I think only one of them has a bit of reference to it with a graphic including a tunnel at an entirely new location under Drummond Street bus station. And that does have a little bit of comparative costing in there. So I'd be very interested to know what the specifications of these were, whether it was to look at a tunnel system, to look at a non-tunnel system, or to do some sort of comparison. And if there is some sort of comparison done, why that is not drawn out more in the presentations that we have been seen, because at present only one of them does actually look at that. So yeah, that knowing what other information is out there would be very useful. One element of the 3 concept designs that is sort of implied but not really referred to is the question of autonomy, and obviously that is going to be fundamental to these designs. It would appear, it's not made explicit. And that would have implications for the delivery in the future. I mean, autonomy is simply not at a stage now which could run things of this nature. Uber, for example, last year pulled out entirely out of autonomy, having spent billions on R&D in autonomy. So if Uber can't manage it, we do need to have some confidence that we can manage it. I mean, I had a question about what was going to happen to these. It certainly wasn't clear in the information published what is going to happen to the concept designs. Now the comments from Mr. Sexton just now have helped with that. They're going to be assessed. There's sort of be good input into that technical design for lot 2, which is helpful. But that it would have been really helpful to have that clarified. Which does rather take me on to the next question about the delivery strategy. We have been in a fog about how and when this is all going to be delivered. There is a bit more information now. Actually, to be perfectly honest, the comments now from Mr. Sexton have been significantly more enlightening than some of the reports that we've had. The relationship between the delivery strategy, the program business case, the outline business case, just doesn't come out of the report as it is. If I've understood correctly, there is a delivery strategy in draft that will be published in June, and there is a program business case which also will be published in June at the same time. And at that point, outline business case work will commence on the basis of the procurement that's currently going on. And in that case, and then, if I've understood correctly, when therefore could we expect a business case, an outline business case? I mean, we have been, it's always been a few months away. I think 3 years ago we were being told it would be early 2020, and that has slipped further. We were talking about it being around now, not that long ago in last year. So are we effectively saying, so 9 months on from June, that's well into 2022. So middle of 2022 to do for an outline business case, is that realistic? And if that is what we're talking about, why is that not information not in the report? Why is there not yet again no clear timeline on this? The obviously fundamental to that is the funding for CAM. There's an extraordinarily small amount in here. Might recall that when it's actually referred to in the report, when we adopted the growth strategy in 2.5 years ago, which I was actually at that meeting, there was the agreement was to work on a funding strategy. Then, as I understand it, absolutely nothing has been published since then. Is the funding strategy work going to be carried out alongside the OBC or part of the OBC?
Councillor Van Vet, you made a very, very long statement so far on questions. Excuse me. As a point to Chairman, you made a very, very long statement on CAM at this moment in time, but you don't seem to have read the agenda item, and you've made very few points about the agenda item. Can you please put your questions to the agenda item, and maybe some of the other issues you could would come at a different time. But your points that you made seem to be aimed at another agenda item to the one which Councillor Cant asked a question about earlier on.
Okay, we're talking about agenda item 3.1 now.
We are.
Yeah, so I've talked about the concept designs, which are one section of the agenda, the delivery strategy, which is another section, and following on to that, the OBC, and funding, which is included in there. I did say at the beginning it would be a long. I would have several points to make because it is many tens of millions of pounds that we're proposing to spend. I firmly believe that I'm speaking entirely to the agenda report. I mean, I would quite like to carry on.
Carry on, but as I said, we have an agenda item, and Mr. Sexton will answer questions that he can, but the agenda item is very clear.
Yes. Right. So thank you. I think what I'll do is I'll try to answer your questions as I noted them down, and at the end, perhaps if I'll leave it to Kim to cover the points about sharing information with board members and how that's going to be done. So in terms of the points that you made, in the design concepts, all three concept designs covered both surface and subsurface options. Secondly, in terms of autonomy of vehicles, you're right in that the state of technology at the moment does not allow autonomous vehicles to operate at the moment. So all the concepts had some sort of transition arrangement from where technology is at the moment and where regulatory authorities are at the moment, through into an era where autonomous vehicles outside of railways would be permitted by the regulatory authorities. In terms of what happens next, I think you agreed that in my answer to Councillor Count, I covered that. So we can take forward any or all of the ideas from the 3 design concepts through to our designer, which is the Lot 2 consultant. And we can either do that sort of informally or formally by contracting them into as a consultant to the Lot 2 provider. The delivery strategy and the business case, I think we can get bogged down in terminology and semantics here. I think I did say that the delivery strategy pulls together all previous work on business cases which had been undertaken by the combined authority. The business case that we are aiming for is what is called, the terminology is a bit confusing. The program business case is the high level business case. I think maybe you refer to it as the outline business case. That is the program business case. And that is the business case which we are intending to produce with the optioneered engineering design over the next 1 year. So the plan is to produce that program business case in the spring of 2022. That's the high level business case, and from that are developed a series of outline business cases, OBCs, for the different components of the CAM portfolio. The funding strategy, finally, that is absolutely part of the business case, because the funding strategy, I mean, will define how the program is going to be funded and financed for delivery. So that is absolutely a part of it. And the delivery strategy, I think as you heard earlier, will come to the Combined Authority Board in June.
Come back on that, Councillor van der Weyden.
Yeah, well, there was the question about the information on the for the concept designs and showing of that I think Mrs. Sexton passed over. So.
Would you like me to take that, Mayor?
Yes, please, Kim.
Yeah, I think this comes back to the point that Councillor Count made. I think a dedicated session around the concept design is needed with leaders. It's wonderful that you're all very enthusiastic about wanting to understand and contribute to the project, and we'd really like to harness that. I'm thinking possibly we may need to more than one dedicated session on the CAM. So I'll look to build those in as we move forward over the next few months.
Sorry, Mayor Palmer, I've just had a text message through from one of the members of the board who says that they've been reduced to an attendee. I'm just checking who it is. Can Monica, can we ensure that we have all of the members?
Bailey. I can't see Councillor Bailey.
Can we ensure that Councillor Bailey is an active participant?
I'm an active participant.
Sorry, have we got you back on it? Sorry, it's John Hill. Excuse me, it's John Hill. I didn't get the name on the message. So Monica, as we carry on, we get John Hill back in the meeting. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I didn't know the text message originated from.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Herbert.
I know we need to be good in our use of time, so I'll focus on core issues. But I do think, Mayor, that the point that Councillor van der Weyden made matters. As you know, I wouldn't, if you're talking to somebody in the country about what is the route to somewhere, I wouldn't have started from here. But let's just take it on how it's presented. We're now not going to get an outline business case till 2022. So I think where I start, Mayor, is in recommendation C, what is the role of the directors, the new officers, which potentially could cost £800,000 a year? So if Councillor Bailey is giving forensic attention to the £5,000 that's being spent looking at scrutiny, then we'll certainly be looking at the spend of up to £800,000 on 3 salaries. Who do they work for is my question, Mr. Sexton, because I'm still confused by exactly what is the role of the board and what is the role of the combined authority. Is the combined authority leaving all of the freedoms to the new One Cam Limited, or effectively are we creating both a client and a company? And the reason I ask that is that I do think, Mayor, and you're very quick to criticise Greater Cambridge Partnership, and I won't go into the full detail, but you're very quick to say what has it achieved and so on. But you, Mayor, have been here for 4 years and it don't look like there's going to be a Cam Metro by 2030. And we've had, I think, 8 different lead officers for the combined authority on this project, and we've had at least 10 different consultants. And I just want to understand, in appointing people at a cost of £800,000, exactly what is the position? Do we still have also someone senior at the combined authority, or are we delegating all of that? In terms of the 3.5 million, it helps me that Chris Sexton has answered to say that there is a deadline of 2022. I guess the one question I'd like to ask, Mayor, is well, it's the 2 parts. How much has been spent on Cam Metro to date? Because I do think the public's interested in that. And how much will be spent in the next year? So I think I will just save my focus to be on that part. If either a finance officer or Mr. Sexton could give, or Kim Sawyer could give me that answer. The reason I ask it is when projects get really, really complicated, I do come back to a point that Councillor Count at a previous meeting did pick up, and I use the term intelligent client. If we are going ahead on what's still being defined and you're adding routes to it, Mayor, as potential, so it's going beyond the original 4 billion project, what's the intelligent client? So my question really is that how much has been spent so far, and how much is going to be spent in the next year, and how will this governance work when we're paying salaries of £800,000 to people who are actually working for a company and not directly for the combined authority?
Shall I start on that? So in terms of sort of who does what and who's accountable for what, the operating model for One Cam Limited is the same operating model as is used and recommended by the Treasury and by the Infrastructure and Projects Authority for major programmes. And that is that there are 2 elements. There's a sponsor body, which in our case is the combined authority, and the sponsor lead is the Chief Executive, Kim Sawyer. And there's a delivery authority or arm's length body or delivery body, which is One Cam Limited, which has a board headed by Lord Mayor and a very, very small executive team, which will be headed by the new Chief Executive, and which I am doing at the moment. So between Kim Sawyer and I, we are very clear about her role as the sponsor and my role as the delivery authority. And the sponsor organisation, the combined authority, monitors the performance of the delivery authority in delivering the programme. The delivery authority, and they're all the same, has an executive team which is headed up by a chief executive and has a number of directors. In our case, the ones which are being appointed working to the chief executive are a sponsorship and strategy director, and that is the individual, Joe Daly, you just heard today, who will be accountable for taking the business case through to Treasury in a year's time. So that is her focus. And she will also be responsible for formulating the funding and finance package that will fund and finance the programme. And when she arrives in June, she's going to be extremely busy doing that and managing what we call the Lot 3 consultants who are there to help her. But the accountability lies with her as an executive of the delivery arm. The finance director will be accountable for what you expect, which is the finances of OneCam Limited, and will also be accountable for managing what one might call the corporate and support functions within OneCam Limited. I mean, I would say, having been doing this sort of thing for 30 or more years, that OneCam Limited is the slimmest delivery authority that I have ever come across at this stage of a programme. That's a good thing, because it means that no one's tripping over each other. But I can assure you that by comparison with other programmes that I've been on, other delivery arms at this stage of the programme would have been very, very significantly bigger than OneCam Limited.
Ms. Sawyer, would you like to come in? Councillor Herbert asked about costs. Are they? Do you have the cost to hand, or something you could get back to him with?
Yeah, I don't have the cumulative cost. Thank you, Mayor. I don't have the cumulative cost today, but we did hear earlier in response to a question from the Scrutiny Committee about what the commitment is in the medium-term financial plan over the next 3 years. So I'll happily provide those to you. We have been asked for that recently by the Scrutiny Committee, so that is available to hand.
Thank you. No, I definitely appreciate with some reasonable breakdown the spend to date and the expected spend in 21-22. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor van der Veer, you're back in for more.
Yep, absolutely. I will try and keep it very brief. So on the concept designs, given what we've just been told, that there is a significant amount more information, and therefore you seem to be cherry picking that information. I mean, for what purposes, I don't know, but it would be certainly greatly beneficial if a good amount of the information was, or as much of the information was published as possible, was published as soon as possible. And I think it's really regrettable that isn't, and you're controlling the information in this manner. Regarding the process, the development of the business case process, that's very helpful. Thank you. I take it then that once the program business case is done, then as you said, you'll be moving on to outline business cases, and it's that then at that point when the sort of outline business case for the tunnel section, for example, is done. And likewise for the regional arms, there was this announcement earlier on from the Combined Authority about with a map of regional routes, which included a significant number of new stations. And it's not clear where that originated from and how that fits in with the rest of it. Is that going to be fed into the programme business case somehow, or was that something the Combined Authority did off its own bat without reference to OneCam? That'd be really grateful if you could clarify that. Because that does actually relate to what does seem to be a crucial part of the funding strategy, which is garden villages. They have a couple of references in this report, so I think I'm speaking to the report. How does the work on garden villages, how will it be done in this programme that we've just been talking about, and how does the work that's been done already fit into that? I mean, I'm talking particularly from the point of view of SaskCAMS, really very concerned that the decisions around CAM and around the routing of CAM are being determined not for wider public good, but by the convenience of fitting in with particular sites agreements have been made with, which is really regrettable. I mean, I noticed those stations, some of those additional stations that are on this map that has come out of nowhere last week do seem to correspond to garden villages. I mean, it'd be, again, why this information is not being shared more publicly is always astonishing, especially as we are about to go into a crucial phase of the Greater Cambridge Local Plan, and these sorts of considerations absolutely need to be looked at when we are doing that.
Sexton, can you answer some of those questions?
Yeah, I think I may be in danger of repeating myself here, but I'll have a go. I think it's important to recognise that the design concepts competition was very well named, and that is that the three companies involved were asked to produce concepts and ideas, and that is not the same thing as the design of the transport system that will emerge into the business case. And one of the reasons why the business case will take a year to develop is that there's an optioneering process where those ideas and other ideas and what is practicable and what can be demonstrably safe, and you mentioned autonomous vehicles and the stage we're at those, that will all be brought together in an optioneering process which will be aligned and merged with the funding and finance strategy. And it's only when all of that is brought together that we will have a proposal for a design to which the business case will speak. And that is the work that will be done intensively over the next 9 months or so. In terms of the map, we have not yet defined precisely the set of requirements that we're going to work to. That is perfectly normal at this stage because it's the sort of front end of the optioneering process. So it's the fact that requirements are still emerging would be expected at this point in the programme. But as we get through the engineering optioneering process and the funding process coming together in the project business case in a year's time, that's when all that converges into a proposal which goes to government.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. And just, in the interest of brevity and trying to focus on the actual item that's before us, I just wanted to comment on the issues around the salaries of the appointments. There is no doubt that to normal people like myself, these salaries are absolutely eye-watering. And I think we have to understand here that we're local councillors, we're operating, this is a completely, certainly to me, an unknown quantity operating, in a system like this where we need to have a credible delivery body. And what we know is that our officers did a huge amount of research and got external advice about how we need to set up as a credible delivery body. And that is why we voted to support the introduction of OneCam Limited. And if you want to have credibility, you have to have the right people to deliver. We've been out to the market. We understand the salaries that are required and the salaries that these people can command in other big infrastructure project organisations. So this is the model. If we are going to be serious about delivering CAM, we can't mess about. We've got to have the right delivery vehicle. This is the delivery vehicle that we've agreed to. And we are, surprise, surprise, now recruiting to that delivery vehicle. Certainly I was involved, I think we've had a good level of involvement in the setup of this organisation and the people that are going to populate it. And I was involved in the recruitment activity for the finance officer and was incredibly impressed with the person that we chose. And yes, the salaries are large, but it is what is required to pay because these people can get these salaries elsewhere, and we're delivering a massively important, huge, innovative, game-changing piece of infrastructure for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough that is not just about a future sustainable transport system. It's about levelling up our geography as a whole and giving opportunities to left behind areas. And I totally support this, and I understand, as you know, eye-watering as it is, that you need the right people to deliver this. And I think we should be very pleased that we've been able to attract these people. There is clearly something about this project and their passion for Cambridgeshire, which certainly was on display from what I've seen, and their passion for this project, that means that they have been attracted to come and do this work. And I'm extremely grateful that they are joining us if we agree this today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Bailey. Councillor van der Veer, you're back in for a third try.
No, it's simply to say that several of the questions that I asked previously were not answered. Why? I mean, whether more information about the concept designs will be published, if the tunnelling OBC will be done after the programme business case has been done, when we might expect actual delivery of this. Is 2029 still realistic, or are we talking about some date specifically beyond then? Where that map of the routes came from, and what the position is on garden villages and in the funding, and how that's going to fit in with the work being done now.
Okay. Can we answer Councillor van der Veer's points immediately? I mean, some of them I'm not sure, but some of them we can. Does somebody come in on that? The tunnelling business case, of course, has been completed once and will feed into the main business case, of course. The information that came from the presentations, and we've offered a presentation to the board. So I think that's eminently satisfying that you will get a full presentation if you want one. The points on the map came about being a bit more upfront with the general public and putting that route out, so that villages along the route were very clear that they were included in concept. This isn't about an underground for Cambridge, it's about a metro system for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and it's important that there's inclusivity across there. Have I missed anything?
Garden villages.
Pardon?
Garden villages.
Garden villages have been part and parcel of Cam Metro from the very beginning. I campaigned for election in 2017 using land value capture and as a mechanism to pay for Cam Metro alongside tax incremental funding. That hasn't changed at all. I've been completely upfront about that from day one. I've had conversations with your leader about sites, but we've not identified any sites other than to have early discussions with landowners on the potential for land value capture. And it would be completely remiss of anybody, I believe, in the 21st century designing a new public transport route, not to plan ahead for the potential of capturing hundreds of millions of pounds for the public purse to pay for that. So there is nothing new, Councillor van der Veer, in my view that garden villages or garden towns are the right way to build. I've been public about that. I'm very critical of local plans and have been for many years, in that they create next field development and inappropriate infill development, and that they usually ruin the fabric of villages and towns that have been there for many years. And my preferred method is that I think is best is garden towns, and I've been upfront and straight about that. And I've said ad infinitum that we need to deliver infrastructure ahead of housing growth, ahead of housing development, and the only way to deliver that appropriately, ecologically, in the best possible manner is through garden towns. So there's nothing new in here, Councillor van der Veer, at all. So these things are all, for these concepts to mention garden towns, is entirely in line with the conversation I've been having about CAM for 4 years. Any further comments, please? So I'm happy to propose this from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Holditch. We will go through one by one. So we go to Mr. Adams first.
Yeah, approve.
Councillor Bailey.
For.
Councillor Bowden. For. Councillor Count.
For.
Councillor Herbert.
Abstain.
Councillor Holditch.
For.
And Councillor van der Veer.
Abstain as well.
Okay, so we move on to item 3.2, which is the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Regional Transport Model, and this is Mehmet. Welcome.
Chairman, apologies, Mayor, I do have a point of order.
Oh, my apologies. Of course, Councillor.
And I very much regret raising this because I'm in favour of what we've just voted for. But my reading of I think it's really important that we do things constitutionally correctly, because if we don't, then it can all unravel at a later stage when the unconstitutionality becomes clear. Now, my understanding is, and Mr. Parkin can correct me if I'm wrong, of course, but my understanding is that Part D of the resolution that we've just had does require a 2/3 majority under the Constitution. In fact, it's stated that on page 2 of the report. And for transport-related matters, as is stated on page 2 of the report, and as is shown in paragraph 16.8 of chapter 5 of the Constitution, it's necessary for the votes of 2/3 of the constituent authorities to be in favour. Unfortunately, I don't believe that that's actually the case in this case. That we haven't got 2/3 of the constituent majority of the constituent authorities in favour. I wonder if Mr. Parkin could just check that point for me first, and to tell me if I'm wrong.
Happy to. So Councillor Fuller isn't in attendance today, so we take the constituent authorities. We have essentially 6, so it makes a minimum 4 in favour, which I make, including the transport authorities.
Well, I respectfully suggest that that isn't a correct reading of paragraph 16.7 and 16.8, particularly of chapter 5 of the Constitution. And it also doesn't comply with what's specifically stated on page 2 of that report. Because, and I think this goes back to the way in which the authority was created, whilst a normal 2/3 majority in accordance with paragraph 16.7 is exactly as you described, Mr. Parkin, I believe that for transport related issues, which this is, it does need to be 2/3 of the constituent authority members of the combined authority who vote in favour. There are 7 members of the combined authority, and there were only 4 votes in favour.
Yeah, so that's my I'm just going to need to turn up that to paragraph
16.8 of chapter 5 of the Constitution. As I say, I'm sorry to raise this, Mayor, but it is important that we don't get into an area which could be challenged at a later point, and I have a potential solution for you as well, I have to say.
Well, Mrs. Thatcher liked Lord Young because she said, he doesn't bring me problems, he brings me them with solutions. So,
absolutely.
I think that Mayor Palmer will be very flattered to be compared with Margaret Thatcher.
Well, or you with Lord Young.
Maybe not so much.
Yes, I'm going to need to check the order. My understanding is that it's constituent authorities present and voting, which is why my view was that was taken through. You mentioned the proposed solution. I'm going to need to check the order now.
Well, I do have to say that your interpretation, when you look at the wording of 16.7 and 16.8, it's clear 16.8 is written in that particular way, and that does also reflect what's on page 2 of this report. But my potential solution is a very easy one, because I don't believe going into the local elections, as we will be, and for that matter, the mayoral election in the next few weeks, I don't believe that the Labour Party or the Liberal Democrats will want to be accused of sabotaging the CAM project by...
That's a gross and unfair statement.
Let me finish, please. I don't believe that you would want to. So I would, my suggestion to try and assist the process is, if Mr. Parkin agrees with my interpretation, that we utilise paragraph 21 of chapter 5, and that we suspend these regulations to allow for the vote to be taken again, so that they could be reconsidered by Councillor Herbert and Councillor Van der Weyer.
Mr. Mayor, sorry to not give it a minute. Can I ask for a very short adjournment of 5 minutes to look at this? I want to give absolute clarity.
In the interests of helpfulness, Mayor, you could continue with a different item and we could come back to this. And whilst I'm speaking, I do think that was gratuitous and unnecessary. We are aiming to have good decisions here, Councillor Bowden.
With respect, I was trying to get you out of a potential political hole.
That is a gratuitous and a false suggestion. We're not in a hole, therefore we don't need to get out of it, with respect. If your members don't turn up for meetings, that is a problem.
Councillor Herbert, could we stop shouting across the room, please? Councillor Count, you've indicated.
Yeah, if Robert Parkin is going to go and check the legislation, I want to ask him to pay special attention to the suggestion by Councillor Bowden that we could suspend standing orders and take the vote in a different way, not in respect of whether we could get this over the line or not, but the fact that John Holditch and I basically have a veto vote. And if you can suspend it for the 2/3, can you suspend it for the veto? Because I'd be really quite upset to find out if that were the case. So I do need to know where we stand on that. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Herbert, you want to come back on this again?
I'm sorry, I'm with Councillor Count. I'm not in favour of suspending standing orders, but I do want the officers.
Apologies to cut across. Point of order. I didn't say I wasn't in favour of suspending. I said I wanted clarity on whether if one law for one applies to the other. So all I want at this stage is an answer. I've not given an indication of my thoughts.
I didn't think I referenced you, Councillor Count. I was just stating my own view. And I was trying by suggesting that this could be done offline, of trying to expedite business. But I do think personally that once you start suspending standing orders on a major voting decision, you're in a difficult position as an authority.
Councillor Bowden, I'll let you come back, and then I'm going to offer Mr. Parkin the opportunity to go and look into this while we move on to the next item.
Thank you. May I just emphasise that Councillor Count is entirely correct. There are quite a bit of the Constitution which cannot be suspended, and quite a few procedural rules which can't, where they are laid down in law, and where you're just not allowed by an authority to suspend them. What I'm suggesting be suspended is the fact that we've had a vote, and this gives an opportunity for a second vote to be taken. Not necessarily that we change anything in terms of the rules themselves, just as a matter of procedure to allow either Councillor Herbert or Councillor van der Veer to change their vote if they so wish. Otherwise, they can go into the election saying that they are in some way deciding to stymie the progress on the CAM.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Holditch, you want to come in on this?
I've always understood that an abstention then goes to a vote for the majority. Although you've abstained, you've let it go through as it is, so therefore you have supported the main vote. That's how I've always understood it.
Okay. If you've heard the views, let's find out the legal realities, and we will move on while Mr. Parkin looks at it.
We will maybe, but I will come back on some of the gratuitous point that was made later.
This seems to be a meeting where lots of gratuitous points are made, Councillor Herbert, and you have to take as well as give, I would imagine. So we will move on to item 3.2, which is Mehmet was in the room. Mehmet, off you go.
Afternoon, Mayor. Afternoon, members. So, obviously, conscious of time, I won't necessarily paraphrase the entire paper, but I'll pick up the main points of what the actual ask is today. The main recommendation is to approve the drawdown of £750,000 from the medium-term financial plan for the development of the regional transport model for the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough region. I guess, as you know, we currently have a Cambridge sub-regional model. Everyone refers to it as the CSRM 2 model that the Cambridgeshire County Council currently maintain and use for several purposes. That is very much a Cambridge centric model. We also have another model in Peterborough that is currently in operation as well. Obviously, both can talk to each other. I guess we're in a position now where the actual CSRM2 is up for renewing, updating, and the view is that we work as one region, both Peterborough and Cambridge, to actually build a multimodal model for both Cambridge and Peterborough, and working in partnership very much with the County Council and the City Council to develop that, but also ensuring that we work with other partners that are clearly going to be important with Highways England and also Network Rail as well to feed into that. And the money itself and the budget, the £750,000 of capital, is to get us started. You know, this is a business critical piece of software that we need for our business cases, for our testing of schemes. So we want to make a start in earnest as soon as a decision's been made to actually make a start to build the actual model itself. So that's essentially the summary for me, and I'm happy to take questions, Mayor Palmer.
Councillor Kemp.
Yeah, good modelling leads to good decision making. It's a necessary step. I'd like to propose this and ask for a seconder.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder? Mr. Adams and Councillor Bowden, hands are up. Lewis.
Thanks. I concur that we need good data. My question is, what's the time scale? And also part of that is, if we are going out collecting data at the moment, the data's flawed. So I've got great concerns about the risks of the government relying on census data for the county if it's incomplete. So I just appreciate an answer on the timescale and at what stage will we be deep digging for data, given that current transport patterns are nothing like they were in 2019.
Mehmet.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Herbert. In terms of the data, we are in. We're having meetings with the Department for Transport regarding the actual collection of data, whether it will actually be collection of data, and obviously the current position we're in around COVID. So hopefully we'll be in a position to align with the actual model build as well. So that's where we are on the data side. In terms of programme, obviously one of our expectations are, obviously using this money, obviously we're going to build the programme specification around it. We need to go to procurement. You know, we'd hope to think in the next 12 months that we'll be in a good position to have something that is, you know, in position that we can use. But that is very much, concentrating on the fact that we will need a TAG compliant model, and us working with the DFT is going to be crucial as part of this. So those conversations have started, and we hope to be in a good position soon. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a proposer and a seconder. I've not heard anybody speak against. So if we're happy to move to the next item with a unanimous verdict, we will move on to item 3.3, which is the A605 stand ground to Whittlesea access improvement. Anna is going to join us. Hi, Anna.
Hello.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. This paper provides an update to the progress of the A605 stand ground Whittlesea improvements and to seek approval of additional capital funds of 220,000 to support the project. In late September 2020, enabling works started on site to provide a temporary road for traffic management purposes and to undertake work to protect a high pressure gas main. This work has been completed and the main construction work is underway and expected to complete in mid-May. The close proximity of the high pressure gas main required a number of options to be considered to enable the project to progress. It was determined that the gas main should be protected through shelling works and widening the existing layout of the junction. Peterborough City Council had anticipated that the work could progress within budget. However, since then, a projected forecast overspend has been identified. It is proposed that the Combined Authority fund the known projected overspend of 220,000 and Peterborough City Council would provide contingency costs further on to that. I commend this report to the board.
Thank you. Councillor Holditch.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can only apologise for being overspent on this. In my time as leader and indeed as deputy leader the last 10 years, we've never been overspent on anything, and we've always been on time. But this is something that was found out once we started. It's a very, very old gas main, so it's either got to be rerouted at great expense, or we've got to find some way over it, which we did, but it led to an overspend. So if the council Combined Authority could support that, would be very appreciated.
Councillor Bowden.
I'm very happy to support this proposal. It's the least bad option which is available to us. It's very clear that this junction does need to be improved. I don't think it'll be completely sorted out, but it will at least be improved. But whilst these works are going on, and we also have the work for the construction of King's Dyke taking place only a little bit further along further on the A605, it's absolutely vital that we get the coordination right, and that any additional works which are going to be required, which weren't previously anticipated, are properly coordinated with the King's Dyke work, so we don't end up with the whole area just descending into gridlock as a result of two sets of works taking place at the same time, which aren't properly coordinated.
Thank you very much. There are no further speakers. I'm happy to propose from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Holditch. Nobody's spoken against, so I assume we're happy to forward this £220,000 to deliver this important junction. And we move on to item 3.4, which is the fourth tranche of recommended projects for the Market Towns Programme investment prospectus. And this report contains an appendix which is exempt from publication under paragraph.
Sorry, my apologies, Mayor. Did we not agree we would go to 4.1 to 4.3 and just prioritise the things which Councillor Count needs to be present for?
My apologies. Yes, we did. Thank you, Councillor Bowden. It's a good job you're on the ball. So item 4.3.
I think it may be 4.1 first, Mayor.
541.
Okay. 4.1 is local transport plan low emission vehicles strategy, and we have Tim Bellamy. Tim.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, board members. Mindful of time, I'm not going to go through all the paper. I'm just going to do a brief synopsis. So the purpose of the paper is to invite members to approve a refresh to the local transport plan during the 2021-22 financial year. And in addition, members are invited to agree that the authority should develop an alternative fuel vehicle strategy. In January 2020, the CA board agreed and adopted the local transport plan. And within this paper, it was said that the LTP would need to be updated and revised to reflect the changing environment and needs. Since the publication of the LTP, a number of significant changes to the context of the regional transport network, but also the overarching strategy has taken place. Things include the national policy changes, such as the national bus strategy, Bus Back Better, the new national walking and cycling policy with gear change, climate change targets outlined in the decarbonisation of transport plan, and the 10-point plan for green industrial resolution. In addition, the establishment and recommendations of the Climate Change Commission, and the government decision to develop a spatial strategy for the Oxford-Cambridge Arc, and the England Economic Heartland Transport Strategy, which is currently with the Secretary of State, which is also a paper to the board, need to be taken into account. In addition, the single year comprehensive spending review and more recent data available, and then the effects and opportunity presented by COVID-19. In addition, since the publication of the LTP, the Combined Authority and partners have made significant progress on a number of strategic schemes, and therefore it is felt like this is timely to undertake a refresh of the local transport plan. In addition, moving on to the alternative fuel vehicle strategy, because of the authority's zero carbon ambition, the greater emphasis placed on alternative fuel by central government and the recommendations of the Independent Climate Change Commission, it also appears to be a timely opportunity for the authority to develop and implement an alternative fuel vehicle strategy and associated action and delivery plan. I commend this paper to the board.
Thank you. Councillor Herbert.
2 points. One is to just dig a bit further, Mr. Bellamy, about what exactly is the link with the ARC, because with the ARC having a statutory spatial plan, and with aspects like East-West Rail being quite critical, isn't this going to be an annual exercise, given that things are further changing? My other question, Mr. Bellamy, draws out from the last discussion about the transport model. We really can't make judgments at the moment until we've got a better idea of the actual quite significant changes to transport patterns that will occur after COVID, albeit that there's every evidence that there will be what would be called a bounce back to previous behaviours. So I'm just concerned that if we do too much this year, we'll end up having to spend just as much money next year. Thank you.
Happy to me to take those.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so in order to answer the second question, Councillor Herbert, is regarding the model and the judgment where we are, we're going to be undertaking some significant work around scenarios. So depending, because there is some uncertainty following COVID, but we need to be in a position where we can take those opportunities and build on them and part of the plan going forward. But also, the number of scenarios will need to be looked at, and to say actually as and when things do emerge and we understand better, we can be in the right position to take advantage of those opportunities and to reduce the barriers going forward. In relation to the OPCAM ARC and the spatial plan, we are supportive of the East-West Rail, and we need to understand how we as a local transport authority can implement a strategy to maximise the opportunity presented by schemes such as East-West Rail and others that are outlined within the spatial plan and the ARC, and align ourselves with the government thinking.
So briefly, will we also, Mr. Bellamy, need to put forward another 200 grand next year?
There's currently £200,000 in the budget for the next financial year, and subsequently there is another £100,000 in the budget for 2022-23.
Okay, get on with it.
No further speakers. I'm happy to propose from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Holditch. And so therefore we move on to item 4.2, which is the Fengate access for the university. Anna.
Thank you. The paper provides a summary of the outcome of the strategic outline business case and to seek approval to proceed to the phase 1 of the outline business case. The embankment area in Peterborough is identified as an opportunity area by Peterborough City Council and is expected to attract significant growth in addition to the university. 2 packages, each with a number of interventions, have been identified for further development. Package 1 includes a northbound off-slip from the Frank Perkins Parkway, whilst Package 2 includes a section of dualling of Boongate. Further operational modelling of both packages, including testing the impacts of the proposed relocation of the football stadium, is needed to determine a preferred option. In the meantime, engagement with DfT will continue to develop the existing major road network application. I commend this report to the board.
Thank you, Anna. Councillor van der Veer.
Yeah, very briefly, I was at the Transport Committee when it was discussed that these schemes might very well be needed. I think my problem there was that they failed to look at how more sustainable forms of travel could be integrated and encouraged, and therefore aren't really meeting our ambitions in relation to climate change. So I think I won't be supporting this again.
No further comments. I'm happy to move from the chair. Councillor Count.
Yeah, I just find it amazing that we're trying to stymie what's absolutely necessary in that area because of climate change conditions, and perfectly prepared to vote against the Cam Metro, which was being discussed earlier, or not vote against. That's incorrect.
Sorry, we didn't vote against it.
Abstain and potentially putting a halt to. I totally understand why people want to support or don't support or abstain things, but I don't see the rationale for using the same argument in 2 different ways. And I find that quite, this meeting's gone on long enough. There's an election coming up. Let's try and concentrate on doing what's good for the people of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough and stop trying to score points in time for an election.
Councillor Holditch.
Yeah, naturally, I'd like to support this and second it, if I may. It's about getting the traffic into the university in a proper and safe way without cluttering up. You can also say that it would not increase traffic too much, but standing traffic is worse than traffic that moves, as far as the environment is concerned. And I think this opens it up. And if we don't open it up, then, you know, we're putting in phases 1 and 2 of the university. 3, 4 and 5 will simply won't be able to go ahead because there isn't any parking spaces. So, and that's where we are. So I fully support it.
Thank you, Councillor Herbert.
Briefly, I support this. I've had a look at it. You can't create a new university without there being roads linking up to them. And I'm sure that the Labour candidate, Councillor Nick Johnson, will be an enthusiastic supporter of this access too.
I think it's quite extraordinary, really, on a day where Peterborough has lost John Lewis, to then go and vote against something which is going to bring massive investment into the heart of a city that's just had a body blow is frankly beyond my comprehension. It's not about playing politics, it's about bedevilment of the highest and most shameful manner. So, but that's the game we're in, unfortunately. Common sense often doesn't take precedence over political manoeuvres. So we have, I'm happy to propose from the chair, Councillor Holditch, I'm assuming you're happy to second as the leader of the City Council. So we have to go for the vote. Mr Adams?
For.
Councillor Bailey?
For.
Councillor Bowden?
For.
Councillor Count?
For.
Councillor Herbert?
I support.
Councillor Holditch?
For.
And Councillor van der Beer?
Same.
Okay, A47 dualling, item 4.3. We have Anna again.
Okay. This paper provides an update to the committee on the onto the board to the outcome of discussions with Highways England on the A47 dualling project. Since the A47 dualling update at previous Transport and Infrastructure Committee as well as board, the Mayor and the Minister for Transport, Brian Esfair, met in January to discuss the A47 and future activities. So far, the Combined Authority has promoted this scheme on its own responsibility. The Combined Authority's objective has been to secure agreement with government that this project would be taken forward in partnership with Highways England and recognised as a priority for development work by Highways England and DfT. The meeting confirmed that Highways England would undertake the strategic assessment of the A47 between the A16 and Walton Highways, east of Wisbech, working in partnership with the Combined Authority. An important objective has therefore been achieved. Highways England has now confirmed that it will fund the work, and this shows a significant commitment to the development of the project. A Highways England project manager has been appointed and work commenced in February. And continued engagement with Highways England will take place through monthly project boards. Thank you. I commend this paper to the board.
Thank you very much. Councillor Holditch.
Actually, I support this. I think it really is for the economy of Eastern England. This road is very important. We mustn't lose sight of the fact that it joins up with the A47 and it starts across from Birmingham and goes right the way through to the East Coast. And, you know, it keeps coming and going. And I'm glad that we are in it. And we'll certainly support it from this end because it is vital to Peterborough. And I think the government needs to look. It's all right looking at the Ox Arc, whatever its latest name is. But, you know, this road, as I said, does come from Birmingham. And so does the railway. And I don't see any proposals to upgrade the railway. And there's 5 million people go through Peterborough Station in a year. And we've just actually got an extra carriage on it, I think, through you pushing, Mr. Mayor, through that train that comes from Birmingham to Stansted. And I think the government needs to put more money into bringing the railway across from Birmingham to the East Coast, as well as the road, A47. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This is an absolutely vital project, and therefore I'm happy to support the paper. However, having dealt with government over many different issues and many different arenas, I'm never very comfortable unless I have a written document in my hand. I've been through the highways transport papers, and what they seem to have as documentation was a lot of reassurances and a lot of agreements. And what I'm concerned about is the government has agreed to fund the strategic assessment, introducing a new length of A47 on top of what we actually require for inside our area. But it doesn't actually, I don't have a document to get me the clarity of just how much focus they're putting on the entire thing, etc. So I'm happy to support, but I want a direct action. So I don't want a verbal reassurance on this. I want a written communication from the government, the appropriate department, as to what exactly is being agreed to be done here, so that I've got that to reference in future and hold. So if I could have that written confirmation from the government end, rather than just a reassurance, please.
I'm sure that we can find that for you somewhere, Councillor Count. Councillor Herbert.
Briefly, but I do think that we should come back and subject to who gets elected as mayor and look at how these schemes join up. So I endorse what Councillor Holditch and Councillor Count has said. But you have to pin Highways England down, because we haven't got any commitment, and I am surprised that the A47 hasn't secured progress in any significant way, because whilst I'm no fan of roads and appreciate the ending of the Oxcam Expressway, this is a vital piece of infrastructure, and it is what the combined authority was set up for, to help deliver this.
Yeah, and that's still the ambition, and we're not letting it go. Okay, there are no further speakers. Again, I'm happy to propose from the floor, from the chair. Second, please, Councillor Holditch and Councillor Count, very keen. I haven't heard anybody speak again, so I assume we're all in favour, and we move on to the next item of the agenda, which is Wisbech Rail, item 4.4. We have
sorry,
again.
do we just need to go back to Mr. Parkin regarding the outstanding? I'm just conscious of the time, sorry.
I was trying to get through the items that Councillor Count has to stay for and then go back to Mr. Parkin. That's the ambition. And I'm sure there won't be massive discord on Wisbech Rail, but you never know. But Anna, here's your chance.
Thank you. This paper provides an update on the progress of the Wisbech Rail project and to outline the next steps. Successful engagement with DfT, Office of Rail and Road and Network Rail about the business case and GRIP3 study for Wisbech Rail has identified opportunities, notably by reviewing the level crossing strategy to include barrier crossings and to consider the reuse of material from other Network Rail projects. Discussions also explored how best to ensure the link between Wisbech Rail and the Ely area capacity enhancements, which is needed to achieve a 2 trains per hour direct service to Cambridge. The Mayor has met Chris Heaton-Harris, Minister for State for Transport, on 2 occasions to highlight the importance of both Wisbech Rail and Ely area capacity enhancements for the county. The Minister subsequently confirmed that Wisbech Rail project would be considered for funding alongside the outputs from the Ely area capacity enhancements outline business case as that is completed. To prepare for that decision point, the combined authority, which has until now pursued the project itself, has secured Network Rail's agreement to deliver the next phase of the business case development in partnership. This work will look to align Wisbech Rail and the delivery sequence of the Ely area capacity enhancements. This renewed work will also involve refining the existing work delivered by the combined authority, as well as assessing options for the Wisbech to March line and developing significant cost savings. To bring Wisbech Rail into greater alignment with Ely area capacity enhancements, the renewed work will also consider further the development of an initial service between Wisbech and March, as already envisaged in the business case, with a view that direct services could operate to Cambridge following improvements in network capacity at Ely North Junction. I commend this paper to the board.
Thank you very much. Councillor Holditch.
Mr. Mayor, you've taken a lot of brickbats today, but I don't think you'd have got this far if it wasn't for your persistence on this. And I think you're to be congratulated. And I'm happy to second the paper.
you very much. There are no further speakers. It can only be a good news story. The fact that the Fens have been left behind is something that we've been trying to redress throughout this 4 years of the Combined Authority, and I think we've made significant steps, but there's always more to do, and this is an important step alongside the A47 to get it done. And I'd also like to thank Steve Barclay MP for the help that he's given me in helping keeping this project on track. So there's a proposer and a seconder. Nobody's spoken against, so we'll move on with a unanimous vote to item 4.5, which is St Ives Strategic Outline Business Case. Mehmet.
Thank you, Mayor. Afternoon, members again. This paper that took to Transport Committee was to approve the reallocation of revenue budget of £137,000 that we made through the efficient tendering of the A141 Strategic Outline Business Case project. The fund itself is looking at the development of a strategic outline business case for St Ives. It is to look at what those strategic options are for that area. What that does do, it actually leaves additional capital funding for other projects in St Ives area. As it came out from the previous report, there were some improvement schemes that needed further development, and that is something that will be developed separately with county council colleagues. So therefore, the recommendation for approval is for the reallocation of revenue budget of £137,000. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Nobody has indicated to comment, so we are very happy to. I'll be happy to propose from the chair. And a seconder, please, Councillor Bowden. And nobody's spoken against, so we'll go forward. I think it's very important. I mean, we're clearly making significant strides in improving transport in Huntingdonshire with the A4141 work that we'll link in, and of course this look at St Ives is not before time, and I think it's the right thing to do. We move on to item 4.6, which is the March area transport study, and Mehmet is back in the chair.
Thank you again, Mayor Palmer. The recommendation is for the approval of £60,000 from the medium-term financial plan to undertake some additional work to establish a list of walking and cycling interventions. There's the paper summarised some of the good work that's been happening in March. Very collaboratively between the County Council and also Fenland District Council. There was a list of schemes which is represented within the table, which has been called quick wins, which are currently either been delivered, in delivery, or imminently going to start construction. So there's quite a lot of work going on in March as well. And on the back of this, out of one of those quick wins lists, there was some work around some walking and cycling work to identify a list. That list has been identified. More work needs to be done on that. It was mentioned earlier today by Tim Bellamy around LTM 120 and gear change. Some of that work needs to be considered as part of this, and we believe the £60,000 will go towards just establishing that list and working with our members to actually develop that. Therefore, I recommend the approval of the drawdown of £60,000. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kell.
Yeah, happy to propose or second this if it's already proposed. As you're probably aware, I live and come from March, and I'm really passionate about this project. Very ably chaired by Councillor Jan French, that some of you know, and she's taken us from start up until this point, and it's been very successful. You mentioned earlier on, Mayor, about the lack of investment in Fens for time immemorial, and I think that this is a real step change for us, and I'm looking forward to all the outputs. There's a lot more than this cycling strategy that we've got in front of us today. I'm going to draw attention to one of the non-quick wins, Northern Link Road, which is quite a substantial project. And my ambition is to have that straight away lined up with a cycling and walking segregated route gold standard alongside. This may or may not get identified as part of this strategy, but it's the sort of thinking that we've got to have, and it's particularly useful when you live in a flat area like we do, where cycling is perhaps a little bit easier than in some other areas. So I'm fully behind this. I may appear biased, but that's because I am. So there we go.
Great stuff. Why not? Okay, so there are no further speakers. I'm prepared to propose to the chair, and I'm sure Councillor Count wants a second. Nobody's spoken against, so again, another unanimous vote and the right thing, of course. That leaves us with the 4.4, which is England Economic Heartland Strategy. Councillor Bowden, you're going to say that Councillor Count doesn't need to be present for this, so
that's correct. And I wonder, Mayor, if it may be possible for Mr. Parkin to give a very short statement before Councillor Count has to go.
Yep, Mr. Parkin.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the committee. Mayor Palmer, it's my responsibility to give you advice as chair on the interpretation of the Constitution and the law. So I've looked at this. Thank you for the opportunity to do so. I've looked at the legislation which founds provides for the combined authority, and that provides for the point I was making earlier, that members need to be present and voting. So on that basis, the item had the appropriate level of majority, and it included Peterborough City Council and Cambridgeshire County Council, and therefore was effectively taken. So a point I'd make in addition to that is that I certainly acknowledge Councillor Bowden the spirit in which it was raised, and I think it's, for me, looking at the Constitution on this, it's not appropriately clear. It needs to be corrected. So sorry for the delay in responding. I thought it was very important to go back to the founding order, and I hope that gives you the clarity that you need, Mayor Palmer.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to hear what Mr. Parkin says, and I'm delighted to be proven wrong, and particularly pleased that that particular motion went through despite the 2 abstentions. What I would ask is that this just be added to the list of amendments which are clearly needed to the Constitution, because the Constitution in more than one area now is clearly incorrect and needs to be clarified.
Yeah, and that's something I'm sure we will look at post-May. Councillor Count.
Yeah, thank you. I must go, but thank you very much. Okay.
Yes, and thank you for your attendance, Councillor Count. Members, are we happy to continue? We are 2 members down, but we are still quorate. So if you are happy to continue, we will do so.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I've got to go too. There's so much going on in this town today with John Lewis and that sort of thing. I've got to go and attend to some of it.
Okay, but I think with that in mind,
I think we're done.
The sensible thing here to do would be to reconvene next week at a suitable date for us all to carry on the business of this meeting. Councillor Bowden.
If I may ask, Mr. Mayor, that we reconvene as soon as is reasonably possible. We can all put in substitutes if we need to. So earlier rather than later, please.
Okay.
And possibly earlier, morning-wise as well.
Yes, we can definitely start earlier in the morning, certainly.
Yeah, not before 5 o'clock, please.
Or even 8 o'clock.
Okay, thank you very much for what is always an intense and very enjoyable meeting. Thank you for your attendance, and we will confirm with your PAs when we will meet again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.